What? Do you need something? I just wanted you to listen. There's nothing to talk about. The divorce is final. If you keep following me around, I'll call the police. What? But we used to be married. Used to be, yes. Now we're strangers. You're just the ex-wife who cheated and left. It's not wise to ask too much from life. Perhaps the best way to find happiness is to live within one's means, in a way that truly suits oneself. But I was greedy, and that greed led me far from happiness. I have a younger brother, 2 years my junior. Since childhood, he's been an academic star, excelling in both sports and studies. In high school, he even served as student body president. He went on to a top-tier university, then pursued a master's at another prestigious school, eventually landing a job at a well-known company. Later, he was headhunted by an even bigger firm, where he met and married a woman. He's been a constant source of insecurity for me. Having a perfect younger brother only makes me feel more miserable. I'm average in academics, sports, even looks. The only thing I could claim as my strength is a broader social network. After graduating college, I returned to my hometown and found a job. While it wasn't as impressive as my brother's position at a major company, I managed to get hired at a decently reputable firm. Even so, family gatherings were always centered around him. Though I've grown used to it as I've gotten older, it's never been a pleasant experience. I thought that at least if I could marry someone more attractive than his wife, I'd finally earn some admiration from my family. I consider myself outgoing, yet I've had no luck with women. At parties, I end up just being the life of the party, not a real romantic prospect. But then I met someone who seemed ideal. It happened at a meetup that a friend dragged me to. The moment I saw Holly, I felt an instant attraction. I doubted she'd ever be interested in someone like me. She was beautiful, cheerful, and her slightly curvy figure was part of her charm. Chase, who are you setting your sights on? My friend Bradley, who was next to me, whispered. Holly, I think. She's gorgeous. Guess I'll go for someone else then. Bradley had organized this meetup to help me, his perpetually single friend, finally meet someone. I decided to take a chance, despite my usual fear of rejection. Holly turned out to be more of a listener than a talker. She'd laugh and compliment me as I spoke, making me feel like a hero. When I successfully got her number, I didn't hesitate to reach out. I felt that if I waited too long, she might forget me. Holly worked as an office assistant with no overtime, which meant she was usually free. Once a week, I'd invite her out after work for dinner, and we'd also meet up on weekends. Sensing how promising she was, Bradley even advised, "If you don't think ahead, you're just wasting your time." I was 32. Holly was 27. It wouldn't be strange for either of us to be considering marriage. So I finally confessed my feelings. "Would you go out with me?" "I'd love that. Thank you for asking." I didn't expect her to agree so quickly. Being in a relationship was great, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't truly love me. She never argued or rejected any of my requests. Yet she also never showed vulnerability or expressed her own desires. Still, things went smoothly, and we eventually decided to get married. The following week, I introduced Holly to my parents. Well, what a wonderful woman. Please take care of Chase." My mother was thrilled. My father had said he was relieved to know that, as the eldest son, I was finally getting married. I had been living with my parents, but after the wedding, I moved into an apartment with Holly. I wanted to buy a house soon, but finding the right location was challenging, so for now, we settled for a temporary place. She had quit her job and started focusing on housework. She'd mentioned wanting to be a stay-at-home wife, Though, honestly, she wasn't really skilled at household chores. Dinner was often half-prepared foods. Well, actually, the main dishes were mostly pre-made, and she'd only fix a few simple side dishes. Even so, I felt content just to be married to Holly, and shopping together on weekends felt like cherished moments of happiness. Holly tended to be impulsive with her spending, and she'd often sigh about money before payday. Why does all the money seem to just disappear? Well, that's because you. What? Because I what? Never mind. Chase, can't you get a raise? That's up to the company. Why don't you switch to a higher-paying job? The salary I make now should be enough for us to get by. If it were enough, I wouldn't be saying anything. We had never argued before marriage, but after, she started complaining about money. I'm not interested in working part-time. With that, she made it clear she had no intention of working. My salary was relatively high compared to others my age. I hadn't expected to be criticized like this. I had wanted to buy a house soon, but at this rate, it felt impossible. Yet, after about a year, there was a shift. Her mood seemed to improve. Did something good happen? When I asked, she'd just say, "No, nothing," dismissively. She had to be cheating. I had a hunch. I decided to hire a private investigator to look into it. Walking into an agency with a big sign saying Infidelity Investigations was nerve-wracking, but the staff guided me through the process with practiced ease. They explained the duration and cost, and I went ahead with a week-long investigation. As expected, she was indeed having an affair. They couldn't verify the man's job. Actually, they hinted he might even be unemployed. An affair with an unemployed man. It didn't sit well with me, but at least the affair was confirmed. According to the investigator, he wasn't seeing anyone else but Holly. He was younger than Holly, only 26. When he met Holly, he dressed stylishly, but otherwise, he dressed like he was lounging at home. He lived in an old, low-rent apartment, hardly the type you'd associate with wealth. I had suspected our marriage was about money from her end, but I had accepted that. However, using my money to be with another man was a different story. I needed to find a way to stop Holly from contacting him. Ideally, I'd like to see their messages, but how? Her smartphone was locked, and I didn't know the passcode. Then it hit me. I deliberately stepped on her phone and broke it. If she sends it in for repairs, she'll probably resort to using her computer to contact him. Holly was furious that her phone was broken, but I promised her a new one if it couldn't be fixed, and she seemed to accept that. There is nothing she desires more than material things. The computer usually sits in the bedroom, but ever since we got married, I haven't used it, so she probably thinks it's safe to snoop around on it. 2 days later, while Holly was out, I opened the computer, and sure enough, a messaging app was installed that hadn't been there before. On it was a string of messages that made my stomach turn. I checked the messages from the previous day, and my anger boiled over. When can we meet next week? Tuesday, when the guy who doesn't turn much comes home late. That way, we'll have plenty of time together. Just be careful not to get caught, or we won't be able to see each other anymore. Don't worry, the guy completely smitten with me. The guy, she means me, right? It's true that I'm infatuated, but I don't tolerate infidelity. From that day, I checked the messages every day, and while doing so, I remembered something. Holly loves anniversaries. She would get frustrated when I forgot these special days. It seemed like she was celebrating those days with him as well. 3-month anniversary since we met. Can't wait. Is there anything you want? I'd love some jewelry, but I can't afford anything pricey right now. The business isn't doing so well. Oh, is everything okay? I'm fine. The bank will give me a loan. Good. It must be tough being a business owner. As long as I have you, Holly, everything's fine. Wait, a business owner? A loan? The private investigator said he was unemployed, didn't he? Well, that's beside the point. What worried me more was that Holly seemed to be funneling her own savings from a bank account she's had since before we were married to this guy. Maybe he's a so-called entrepreneur by day and a male escort by night. Maybe he's saving up to start a business. If he's cutting back on his lifestyle for that purpose, then I guess his modest clothing and apartment make sense. But Holly rarely goes out at night. They must be meeting while I'm at work. It's possible he's genuinely involved in some business without the escorting aspect. I started engaging Holly more on her anniversary days with him, intentionally striking up conversations. As expected, she was cheerful and talkative on those days. New jewelry or clothing would appear, though they didn't look particularly expensive. As the messages went on, the man began asking for money more frequently. I manage my own bank account, only giving Holly enough for groceries and some spending money, with no debit card. So if she wants to give him money, it has to come from her own funds. It was clear she was being manipulated by a dangerous man, but the fact remained that Holly was the one cheating. When I felt I had enough evidence, I decided to invite Holly to dinner. How about going out for dinner tonight? That's unusual. What's the occasion? Just thought it'd be nice for a change. I took her to a restaurant I knew she had visited with the man on one of their anniversaries. I've been here before. The food is amazing. Is that so? What would you recommend? You see, without any sign of remorse, she scanned the menu in front of her. Of course, to Holly, I was just a source of money. She didn't dream of any future with me. Hey, I've got a favor to ask. After we finished eating, Holly suddenly looked at me with a serious expression. Is this it? Is she finally going to ask for a divorce? If that's the case, what should I do? Can we increase the budget a bit? Here we go again. Another conversation about money. Are you having trouble managing? Maybe I'm just not good at it. I'm really trying, though. We don't have kids, and I already give you over $2K just for groceries and spending. I know, but when I told my friend about this before, he said, "Are you kidding? Your wife's one lucky lady. Prices are getting so high lately. And we don't have a car, so I can't get to the cheaper stores. Not that she'd go even if we did have one. And, vegetables have gotten ridiculously expensive. She only makes side dishes, and it's just the two of us." All right, really. Just keep a budget for a month. I'll decide after that. If it really seems tight, I'll raise it, so don't worry. Got it, thanks. Of course, I didn't expect her to actually keep a budget, but a month later, Holly handed me a detailed budget she'd kept. Here's the budget for the month. Do you see now that it's not enough? It looked like she'd inflated the numbers. Every price was nearly double what you'd expect. A single carrot for $1. Where does she shop? Some gourmet market. And she doesn't even like carrots, so they rarely make it to the table. Yay, looks like you're right, it wouldn't be enough at these prices. See? This budget was up to yesterday's date. Show me the receipt from yesterday. Well, I threw it away. I see. So about that increase in the budget. Okay, I need to check it against the receipt. You didn't say that before. The prices are way off the average, that's all. She fell silent. I guess she gave up. But her meetups with the guy were still happening. Since she couldn't get money from me, it was only a matter of time before he stopped supporting her. It's about time I confronted her with proof of the affair and filed for divorce. Then, out of the blue, I got a call from my family today. My mom collapsed. I need to go home for a while. As soon as I came home, Holly said this. Is she okay? I'll come with you. She's fine, just resting at home. I'm just going to help with the chores. Chores. She couldn't even handle that here. But I guess her mom, Linda, would feel better with her daughter around. All right, take care of her. I'll come by over the weekend to check on things. If you come, Mom won't get any rest. Oh, all right. So Holly went to her parents' place temporarily. 3 days later, she came back looking glum. That was quick. Is Lindy okay now? Yay, she's fine. They sent me home early. Just to be sure, I made a call to Holly's father, Robert, and confirmed that Linda was indeed just a bit worn out, not in a condition that would require Holly to take care of her. Well, that's a relief. It's nothing serious. Yay, it's a relief. But her face didn't exactly look like someone who was relieved. A few days later, while I was at work, my smartphone rang. It was Holly's father, Robert. Chase, could we talk for a bit? I'm in your area. In the area. Did he really drive 3 hours without notice just to come and see me? But I had a meeting and couldn't get out right away. I'm sorry, I have a meeting now. The earliest I'll be free is 5 p.m. That's fine. I'll wait. All right then. I'll call you as soon as I'm done. It must be something important. Could it be that Linda's condition took a turn for the worse? Or maybe something happened to Robert himself. 5 p.m. I called, and Robert was waiting outside the office. I invited her to a nearby pub. It didn't seem like a topic I wanted to bring home, so I invited him to a nearby pub. We ordered some beer and snacks, and I waited for Robert to start talking. After taking a sip of his beer, Robert hesitantly broke the silence. Chase, are things going all right with my daughter? Well, not exactly. But what was I supposed to say? Yes. Well, sort of. I could only manage a vague response. I thought so. He looked at my face and nodded. Wait, did I mess up my response? I took a gulp of my beer to hide my unease. My daughter came to visit us. So it's about Linda. Is Linda feeling better now? Yes, Holly didn't need to come at all. We told her as much, but she insisted on coming anyway. Insisted on coming sounded like something unusual had happened. Actually, Holly asked us to lend her some money. What? I thought you had a good income and weren't struggling financially. Yes, we're fine. I figured as much. It didn't seem like it was for living expenses. So what did you do? Holly kept insisting it was for living costs, but my wife and I could tell she was lying. Well, I can see why. I started to worry that maybe she had taken on some debt without telling you. Debt. She was saying she urgently needed the money. And that's the only reason I could think of. Was my wife really asking her parents for money just to give it to that guy? My anger flared. I'm not aware of any debt, but I'll talk to Holly about it. When I told Robert this, he looked visibly relieved. I'm sorry. I just didn't want to put you in any trouble. The old man's frame seemed to shrink even more as he apologized. I decided to reach out to the investigator again. This time, it wasn't Holly, but the man who needed looking into. I had to know who he really was. Was he just using Holly, pretending it was for a business venture? Soon enough, the report came back, and it contained something I never expected. The man had a criminal record. And not just any record, he had been arrested for marriage fraud. Holly had been targeted by a scam. I needed to tell her, but if I didn't choose my words carefully, I would only end up provoking her. I was so agitated in that moment that I didn't have the presence of mind to choose my words well. So I decided to wait until tomorrow to gather my thoughts and tell her in a careful, orderly way. When I woke up the next morning, Holly, who usually woke up after me, was already awake and preparing breakfast. I just couldn't sleep. So I went ahead and made breakfast: oatmeal with fruit, bacon, scrambled eggs. She usually only makes toast and coffee. So what's going on? No way she's had a sudden change of heart. This isn't right. Something is definitely off. When Holly behaves out of the ordinary, it usually means she's up to no good. But what could she possibly be doing so early in the morning? Could she have been contacting some guy? Since she got her new smartphone, she hasn't been using the computer, so I have no way of seeing her messages. I thought about this while I got ready for work. Wait a minute. I quickly checked the contents of my wallet in my bag. My debit card from my bank account was gone. Holly had taken it. Holly. I immediately called out to her. Give it back. What? Give it back? My debit card. She hadn't expected me to find out so soon. She probably thought she could withdraw the money today and sneak the debit card back into my wallet tonight. I took the debit card from Holly without a word and left the house. During my lunch break, I went to the courthouse and filed the divorce petition. I had already gathered evidence of her infidelity and prepared the necessary documents, so it didn't take long. After work, I stopped by the gourmet market and bought some high-end prepared foods. Not the kind of thing I'd usually ever eat. I chose them half-heartedly for what was bound to be an uncomfortable dinner tonight. I'm home. Welcome back. Maybe she was starting to feel guilty because she had set out a home-cooked meal on the table. This is snacks. I handed her the gourmet foods. Oh, these are from the gourmet market. I've never had anything like this. Right, thank you. She cheerfully took them to the table. Yes, she's always had a weakness for expensive things. Considering what happened this morning, this isn't the time for her to be all smiles. This is delicious. As Holly filled her mouth with the gourmet food, I interrupted her and began to speak about this morning. Holly's hands froze. What were you planning to use it for? She put down her fork and looked down as she answered. I told you, it was for living expenses. No, it wasn't. It was for a man, wasn't it? What? You thought I didn't know anything. Holly stayed silent. I know you've been meeting another man, and I know you've been spending money on him. Holly's face hardened right before my eyes. You even went as far as using my money. I filed the divorce papers today. You'll get notified soon. When you do, I expect you to sign the consent form. Wait, you're misunderstanding. What misunderstanding are you talking about? The affair is already out in the open. I'm so sorry. I don't know what got into me. Don't put it in the past. It's still going on, isn't it? Were you planning to spend even more of my money on him? Fine, I'll leave you. I'll be supporting him now. And with that, Holly signed the agreement response from the court a few days later. Afterward, we drafted a settlement agreement, and Holly left the house the following morning. Before heading to work, I submitted the settlement to the court. Holly probably went straight to the guy, but a few weeks later, when I got home, I found Holly standing in front of the house. What are you doing here? Do you need something? I wanted to talk. There's nothing to discuss. The divorce is final. If you keep following me, I'll call the police. But we were married. Doesn't that mean anything? She pleaded with tears streaming down her face. We were married. Now we're just strangers. You're nothing more than my ex-wife, who cheated and left. Not a bit of sympathy stirred in me, no matter how she sobbed. In fact, the anger only grew stronger. This isn't your home anymore. If you have nowhere to go, return to your parents' house. With that, I stepped inside and locked the door behind me. Naturally, Holly had left the key when she moved out, so she couldn't just come back in. If she kept causing a scene outside all night, I was ready to actually call the police, but eventually, she left. I hadn't mentioned the divorce to my parents, so I went to visit them that weekend. When I explained everything, they both sighed. Holly did that. Shows you can't always judge a person by appearances, my mom said. My mother had always liked Holly, so it was a blow for her. Forget about her. At least your money is safe, my dad added. About a week later, as I was watching TV before bed, I recognized a familiar face on the screen. I scrambled to find the investigative report, thinking I'd never need it again. I had stuffed it deep into a drawer. From the envelope, I pulled out the 2 photos of Holly and the guy walking arm in arm. It was him, all right, without a doubt. The guy had been arrested again for marriage fraud. There were several victims, not just Holly. It seemed they suspected it was part of a larger scheme. I realized just how close I'd come to losing my life savings to a fraud ring. All those years of hard work weren't just so some criminal could get his hands on my money. Marriage fraud, in my mind, was something that happened to lonely, wealthy women without romantic prospects. I never thought even married women would be targeted, so I was in shock. Holly had believed his talk about running a business, had intended to marry him, and had been giving him money. That night she came to see me. She must have found out the truth and ran to me. Maybe she even heard something from the police. Once they've taken all they can from a woman, she's useless to them. Naturally, she was discarded. The guy might have vanished by now. When I called her parents' house, it turned out Holly hadn't gone back to them. Apparently, the police had also gone to Holly's parents' house, so they knew about the whole incident. Now, there was nowhere left for Holly to go. After that, she never came to me again. Just in case, I moved to a new place and changed my smartphone number. I have no idea where she is or what she's doing now. A woman who spent all her money has limited options for where she'll end up. She may be out on the streets or spiraling down into ruin. But either way, happiness won't be finding her anymore. But I don't feel a shred of sympathy for her. People should reap what they sow. If she hadn't cheated and just lived normally, she could have had a secure future. No, I don't feel any sympathy at all. In fact, I feel a sense of satisfaction, as if to say, serves you right. Technically, I could have sued her for damages, but with her whereabouts unknown, it's too late for that now. Just being rid of her may be compensation enough. In the end, I still haven't managed to prove myself to my older brother, but it doesn't matter to me if I'm compared to him anymore. Through this experience, I've realized that no one can truly see another person's nature. And just like that, my insecurities seem to have disappeared. Life has a way of balancing out the good and the bad. That's what I believe.
Is she running late again? As the start time loomed, I mused while gazing at the empty chair. My coworkers also looked frustrated. Eventually, the owner of that seat showed up about an hour after we'd opened for business. My name is Casey. I'm a 48-year-old office worker. I live with my husband Scott and our 2 kids. My kids are in high school and middle school, so they're pretty independent now, allowing me to focus on my job. Scott recently started a business with some friends, and while it seems tough, he's happier than before. I've been working in accounting for quite some time at this small to mid-size company and get along well with the part-time staff. However, I'm having issues with a newer employee named Frances. She's 24, half my age. The daughter of our managing director, she's clearly a product of nepotism. I didn't mind that initially. It's a small company, and these things happen. So when I heard that the managing director's daughter was joining the company, I just thought, oh, that's it. But Frances is a real piece of work. She was assigned to accounting after one of our part-timers left due to personal reasons. I was mostly handling things on my own, and I'd heard Frances had some qualifications. So, I thought maybe she would lighten my load. Turns out, I was wrong. I'm better off working alone. From our very first meeting, things felt off. When I greeted her, she said, "Sure, nice to meet you, old hag." I was flabbergasted. Not only was her attention divided, but she also had the audacity to call me old hag upon our first meeting. The managing director just watched it unfold with a smile, not seeming to mind. If my kids behaved like that, I'd tell them. Don't be rude. Are things just different nowadays? I've never really liked our managing director personally. We only converse when necessary. I never knew he was so indulgent with his daughter. He probably thinks she can do no wrong. Confronting Frances would only upset him, so I held my tongue. Though I sighed inwardly, I have a duty to train her, so I went on to explain her the tasks. But Frances wouldn't listen. I can't remember all these things at once, she said, giving up even on listening. I restrained my irritation and asked her about her so-called qualifications. I thought you had some kind of certification. What is it? I thought maybe I could assign her work based on that, but her answer was, I'm an accounting clerk. Apparently, she went to a vocational high school and got the certification almost involuntarily. She tried and failed multiple times to become an accounting technician, she told me. Is it really okay to have someone like that in accounting? I had my reservations, but I did my best to train her while focusing on my own work. A month after Frances joined, her attitude hadn't changed, and she still couldn't do her job properly. To be precise, I had taught her the same things repeatedly, but it seemed like she had no intention of remembering, as she didn't even take notes. Other staff members were also complaining that Frances wouldn't do the work they asked of her. What made it even more frustrating was that she was earning the same salary as me, despite my many years of service. Another month passed, and Frances had shown little to no improvement. One day, she didn't show up at the start time. I called her mobile, but it went unanswered. The managing director was out meeting clients and hadn't arrived at the office yet, so everyone was worried. An hour later, Frances finally showed up, acting as if nothing had happened. What happened? Is everything okay? I asked. Oh, looks like I overslept. What kind of professional does that? I told her. If you're going to be late, you should at least inform the office. Frances gave a nonchalant "Okay" in response. Everyone around us sighed in unison. From then on, Frances started being late more frequently. Though she supposedly lived with her family, she spent many nights out, something even the managing director was unaware of. There were times when she would be late even when the managing director was in, but all he would say was, "Oh, you're late today," leaving everyone else dumbfounded. The stress from dealing with Frances kept piling up in various ways. And then the incident happened. Is she late again? Even the managing director didn't know. She had spent another night out. Apparently, she stayed at her lover's place. The start time came and went, and she was nowhere to be found. I called her mobile again, but as expected, no answer. At this point, should we just ignore her? My colleague Deanna said, clearly frustrated. Finally, Frances arrived, more than an hour late. She sat down at her desk without a greeting and started putting on makeup as if nothing had happened. Everyone was stunned, but she didn't seem to care. I finally had to say something. Frances, this really isn't okay. She looked at me, puzzled. They don't seem to know what's wrong. You come in late, no greeting, and you start doing your makeup? Just then, I saw the managing director returning to his desk, but I continued. I've told you before to call if you're going to be late, remember? It felt ridiculous having to say this to a 24-year-old adult. It was like scolding a child. Francis just sulked, acting, indeed, like a child. The last thing I said was, "Isn't it common courtesy to apologize when you're late?" The managing director stormed over to me, his face twisted in anger. He yelled at me, "You insolent brat! Who do you think you are? You're fired!" I almost blurted out, "What?" but held my tongue. Nervous glances spread through the room. Of course, the president is conveniently absent. Well, the president's not really reliable, to begin with. Frustrated with the managing director's tirade, my colleague Deanna spoke up. "Wait a minute, Casey hasn't said anything wrong here." Deanna works in sales and hates injustices. She has a strong sense of right and wrong. We've been good friends for a long time, and we help each other out at work. Everyone else in the room nodded at Deanna's words, but not the managing director. He yelled at Deanna, "You're talking back to me? You're fired too." I couldn't take it anymore and glared at the managing director. "Are you serious about this?" Deanna was glaring at him too. He declared both of us fired and told us to leave immediately. At that moment, the president returned, but did nothing but look puzzled. Apparently, the president and the managing director are relatives, and for some reason, the president can't oppose him. Fed up, Deanna and I packed up and left. We stopped by a cafe on the way to catch our breath. "What's his problem?" "I was getting tired of the job, but I didn't think I'd have to quit like this," Deanna said, still fuming. Indeed, we had started to think about quitting the company ever since Francis arrived. "I feel bad that you got fired because of me." That was my biggest concern. Had I not spoken out, Deanna wouldn't have been fired. Deanna reassured me. "It's okay. I was tired of working full-time anyway. Maybe this is a chance to find a part-time job." "What about you, Casey?" "I've actually been offered a part-time accounting position at Scott's company." Deanna thought that sounded like a better option. "Both the managing director and Francis really tick me off." Deanna was still angry, and I agreed with her. "I wonder if the company will be all right without us." "Not that it's any of our business." I said that, and Deanna finally smiled. "Exactly. Even if they beg us to come back, I won't. I feel like suing them for wrongful termination." We decided to take some time to cool off and discuss what to do next. When I got home and told Scott about what happened, he was even angrier than I was. "What? What's up with that managing director?" I was furious too, and unsure about whether I'd made the right decision, but Scott's reaction confirmed that I wasn't in the wrong. Scott's words were comforting, and I finally felt at ease. I then started working in accounting at Scott's company. The part-time accountants who were already there told me they felt more at ease now, as their workload had lightened. Deanna, too, started working for Scott's company. Though not full-time like before, but part-time. Since we were fired on the spot and had to pack up immediately, we hadn't been able to do the paperwork for leaving the company. Someone, probably my successor Francis, would take care of it. We started working energetically in our new environment. After some time had passed, I received a call from the managing director of my previous company. "We don't understand the accounting you were handling. Come to the office immediately." What's he talking about? Could it be they're failing at the monthly payments to clients and sales calculations that I used to handle? Besides, we haven't even received our exit paperwork yet. But we were fired just for being late. Who do they think they're talking to? Needless to say, I declined. No can do. But the managing director was relentless. "Come right now, and we'll rehire you. You haven't found another job yet, have you?" I sighed. No thanks. I've already switched jobs. I've taught Frances everything about accounting. Not sure if she gets it, though. I hung up after saying that. Apparently, Deanna also got contacted. There were several clients who said they'd stop doing business if Deanna wasn't handling their accounts. The managing director arrogantly offered her re-employment as well. He had underestimated Deanna, thinking she was just a female salesperson and wasn't capable of handling work. It turned out she was a valuable employee. This fueled our anger towards the managing director once again. Meanwhile, my phone kept ringing, with calls from the previous company reaching over 100 in just a few days. Even when I answered the phone thinking that I had completed the necessary documents for my resignation, I was simply told to come quickly because they would rehire me from above. We'd had enough. Frustrated, Deanna and I decided to go to the previous company and give them a piece of our minds. Upon seeing us, the managing director said, "Ah, you finally came back. You should have returned obediently from the start." We hadn't returned to the company, we were there to confront him. I said with a smile, "You should have no problems if Frances is handling the accounting, right? I taught her everything. If she can't do it, that's on her. You, as both a parent and a boss, are failing if you haven't even noticed her poor behavior." The managing director's face turned red with anger. "How dare you? I even offered to rehire you." I calmly responded, "That's precisely why we don't want to be rehired. In fact, we were considering quitting anyway." He looked utterly shocked. "What?" I went on. "Has Frances started acting like a responsible adult yet? While I don't deny nepotism, at least have her work properly. The way she talks, the attitude when she listens, everything about her is unprofessional. Shouldn't you, as her parent, be the one to address these issues? And you fire us just because we pointed that out? It doesn't make sense. To be honest, I couldn't care less about being fired. It was clear things would go south if Frances was the only one left in accounting." The managing director glared at me. "Plus, firing Deanna, who's a stellar salesperson, shows you really don't know what you're doing. No wonder you're losing clients. How many have you lost in the last month?" I say with a grin, and the managing director's face turns beet red. "I came here today to talk about our wrongful termination. We need you to provide the necessary documents. Also, I wanted to see firsthand how much trouble you're in without us." Deanna chimes in after me. "I've already consulted a lawyer about the wrongful termination. We're willing to consider a settlement if it spares us all the hassle." "What will it be?" The managing director bursts out. "What wrongful termination? I was fired on the spot for bringing up issues with an employee's behavior. This is clearly wrongful termination," I say assertively, locking eyes with the visibly pale president. "President, this is your company, isn't it? Your relationship with the managing director has nothing to do with us. Getting more than 100 phone calls is crazy, don't you think? You fire us and now you want us back because you're in a jam? Who do you think would even listen to that?" The president only manages to look paler, unable to say a word. "Mr. President, you've done accounting work before, right? I trust you'll handle the rest." Deanna and I decide there's no point in further discussion and turn to leave. We'll leave the rest to our lawyer. With that, we leave the company. After some time, we received a request for a settlement through a lawyer, and we agreed. We were recognized as victims of wrongful termination, and we got our unpaid wages, severance pay, and a settlement amount higher than the market rate. We were pleased. It felt like we had finally had our revenge on the company. Both Deanna and I would sometimes get urgent calls from clients while we were out, as we had given them our personal numbers. After we abruptly left, some even called to check up on us. I told them the situation and that we had been wrongfully terminated. Word spread quickly in our tight-knit industry. Most of Deanna's clients left once she quit, probably cutting the company's business in half. According to a former colleague, staff kept leaving the company, they were getting complaints from clients, and the president and managing director were overwhelmed trying to keep things running. Frances couldn't manage, so the wife of the former accounting president had to step in. She's a very stern person, and Frances was having a hard time, crying every day. 6 months later, the company apparently went bankrupt. It might be a good thing they lasted half a year. One day, I saw someone who looked like the managing director at a supermarket near the station. I couldn't help but stare. There he was, dressed in the supermarket's uniform, getting yelled at by a young man who seemed to be the store manager. Looks like he's working part-time at the supermarket because he couldn't find another job. I couldn't help but laugh at the irony of the once haughty managing director getting scolded by someone younger. Our eyes met from a distance, and I gave him a nod, which he of course ignored. But I frequent that supermarket, so every time I go, I look for the managing director, who's usually getting yelled at for something. I thought he was competent, but later learned from Deanna that he just took credit for his subordinates' work. By the way, when I told Deanna about the supermarket, she started going there out of curiosity and became a regular customer. In a way, the managing director is contributing to the supermarket's revenue, so maybe he's competent after all. But he's always getting yelled at. Deanna and I continue to work happily at Scott's company. Scott even said he's relieved because our work has increased the company's sales. We're both looking forward to Scott treating us to dinner for our upcoming birthdays.
It happened the night we got married. From now on, we're husband and wife. Looking forward to it. Yay, looking forward to it. But I've got an early start tomorrow, so I'll eat, take a shower, and go straight to bed. What? Right after the toast, my husband Tom sat down in silence, eating his steak. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of him yelling, "Lisa, do you even know what time it is? Hurry up and make breakfast." Days of married life like that passed, until one day I got a call. Tom had been hospitalized in an emergency. When I arrived at the hospital, the doctor had some shocking words for me. "Your husband's incredible. I've never seen anything quite like that." But all I could do was give a wry smile. After all, Tom and I had never even been intimate, not once. This is the story of Lisa, a 35-year-old woman. I used to work in the PR department of a retail company, managing employee schedules, and sometimes even acting as an assistant to the executives. But I left my job to get married. People around me were surprised, saying it was a whirlwind marriage. It was true I hadn't thought about marriage at all until a short time ago. My relationship with Tom, who became my husband, only went back 3 months. At that time, I was eager to get married. I just wanted a home, a family of my own. This story goes back a bit. My father passed away when I was in high school, and from then on, my mother raised me and my younger sister. The 3 of us lived together until my sister got married and moved out. They were happy days. My mom was busy with work, but she always valued time with us above all else. Still, I wished I could have spent more time with her. I never showed it in front of my sister, but deep down, I felt lonely, too. That's why I cherished our mealtime together so much, even if it was just deli food from the supermarket. It felt wonderful. After my sister moved out, it was just my mother and me. Mom retired, and we had some peaceful times, taking trips together and getting together with my sister's family. But that didn't last long. Mom was diagnosed with cancer and began treatment. Her health would improve, then worsen again, over and over. But last year, she finally passed away. I had taken time off from work to be by her side in the end, and I think we did everything we could, so I don't have any regrets. But the sense of loss still overwhelms me. Lisa, you're so reliable. Thank you. I'm always so grateful for your help. But then, my mother added, you don't have to feel like you need to take care of me or your sister. Just live your own life. I still remember when she said that to me, right when I started my job. What? I don't think that at all. I'm actually pretty laid back, I replied, feeling a little embarrassed. But something strange started to well up inside me. It felt a little lonely. Since my father passed away, I'd wanted to support my hard-working mother however I could, so I took on house chores and helped take care of my younger sister, live my own life. What does that even mean? At the time, I didn't think about it too deeply. After Mom passed away, I was busy for a while with paperwork and sorting out her belongings. But after 6 months or so, a deep loneliness started to set in. Live my own life. That phrase kept coming back to me. I had a job. I even had hobbies, so it's not like I had nothing. But what I wanted now was a partner, a home, a family of my own. And I wanted to raise a child someday. I think about such things. It's not that I'd never had a boyfriend. I'd dated one person in college and one in my early career, each for about 2 years. But they both just kind of faded out. Looking back now, I realize it was probably because I couldn't fully make time for them. At home, I'd always put my mother and sister first, even though no one asked me to. At work, too, being in a secretarial role often meant draining my energy, so I didn't really want to use up even more of it on a relationship. That's the truth. But now, being really alone, I realized how wrong my thinking had been. Thinking relationships were tiring must have been just a practical excuse. I wanted a life partner not only for the fun moments, but someone who'd just be there when I was down, too. After getting past my grief, I decided to start looking for marriage. I wasn't really sure what to do, so I got the courage to ask my friends if they knew anyone. But everyone they suggested was already married. So I joined a matchmaking agency. Using a dating app sounded easy, but since I hadn't been in a relationship for a while, I thought getting support would be a better fit. For the agency profile, I went to a professional studio, had my hair and makeup done, and took some nice photos. The picture makes all the difference, the advisor told me, so I put in the effort. Looking at the final photo, I was surprised it looked much better than the real me. It's a bit like false advertising, isn't it? I joked to myself, with a laugh. I met Tom on my third matchmaking date. He was the one who'd reached out first. When I saw his profile picture, my first impression was that he looked serious, 2 years older than me, with a bit of an outdated hairstyle. But there was something clear and honest about his eyes. I didn't expect too much, though. We arranged to meet at a hotel lounge. At first, we were both nervous, and the conversation didn't flow easily. But as we gradually started talking, we discovered we'd both lost our parents, which brought us closer. My dad used to run a business, and now my brother and I are managing it. Because of that, my parents were always busy when I was young, so I didn't get to spend much time with family. He said, I totally understand. My mom was busy too, and whenever we went out to eat together, it was so exciting for me, I replied. Exactly. I'd get so excited. It sounds like we have a lot in common. And we both have younger siblings, too. Yay. When you have younger siblings, don't you feel like you have to be more responsible? For sure. My brother is a little absent-minded, so I was always looking out for him. I did it on my own, but sometimes I felt a bit jealous of him. I didn't have anyone who looked out for me that way. I know what you mean. Because we understood each other's background, the conversation naturally picked up. From there, we moved into more personal topics. So, Tom, was there any particular reason you decided to start looking for a partner? Particular reason? Well, I just started feeling lonely. Work is fulfilling, but I felt like creating a place to call home might bring more meaning to my life. I feel the same way. Since my mom passed, my days have just felt repetitive. I thought it'd be nice to build a family with someone. Tom smiled. I hope we can be that for each other. His kind words caught me off guard, especially coming from someone with such a traditional look. Would you like to take a walk? I'm actually not that comfortable in fancy places like this. Yes, me neither. There was a big park nearby, so we bought some drinks and sat on a bench. From there, the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Favorite baseball teams, how we did in school. Time flew by, and eventually, we went our separate ways. I had such a good time, but I wonder how Tom felt. To my relief, he contacted me that very night to arrange another date. Our second date was just as enjoyable. And then, incredibly, on the third date, he proposed. Lisa, will you marry me? I feel like we could build a calm, comforting home together. Yes, yes. If you're sure about me, I'd be delighted. That's how it happened, just a little while ago. And after that, I canceled my matchmaking agency membership. Tom told me that he wanted me to handle the household chores and also help out with his company. So I decided to leave my job. I can't believe I'm getting married so soon. I fought, unable to hide my excitement. Since we couldn't plan the wedding right away, we decided to register our marriage first and think about the ceremony later. For the move, I relocated to Tom's larger apartment, where he had been living alone. Once we finished moving my things, we went to submit the marriage paperwork together. That night, we ordered steak delivery. Tom, here's to our future. Right, here's to us. But I have an early day tomorrow, so I'll eat, take a shower, and go straight to bed. He replied. What? I was taken aback. Right after we toasted, Tom silently focused on his steak. You're going to bed already. The truth was, Tom and I hadn't been intimate yet. That wasn't so strange, though. After only 3 dates, we decided to marry. And since then, our time had been absorbed by breaking the news to our families, planning the move, and sorting out other logistics. There was no romantic atmosphere at all. I'd assumed that intimacy would naturally follow after marriage. We were both busy, and both at a more settled age, so I didn't give it much thought. But even though we'd started living together, this is our first night as a married couple, isn't it? Tom finished eating quickly, stood up from the table, and turned to head for the bathroom. Should I join you in the bath? I ventured, calling out to him, without turning around. Oh, I don't really feel comfortable sharing baths. It's, my personal relaxing time. Sorry, let's do separate ones, Tom replied. My heart sank. I'd worked up the courage to suggest it, only to be turned down so directly. And then, Tom truly went straight to sleep. Even when I got out of the shower and lay down beside him, he didn't stir at all. Why isn't he waking up? I tried nudging him, but he only rolled over in his sleep, feeling a bit empty. I must have eventually drifted off myself. The next thing I knew, I was awakened by his yelling. Lisa, do you know what time it is? Hurry up and make breakfast. What? Startled, I jumped up, too stunned to process what was happening. Good morning, Tom. It's hardly good morning at this hour. I'm always up by 5:30 am. By then, I expect you to be ready. Breakfast made. Hurry up, 5:30 am. It wasn't just the early hour that surprised me, but Tom's attitude. Being yelled at felt like a shock. I could barely process what was happening, but I went ahead and made breakfast. Toast. I ate croissants for breakfast. Remember that from tomorrow. Oh, sure. Got it. Could he really change this much? I felt small and intimidated. Maybe he's just in a terrible mood because it's early morning. I thought, he has work to get to, after all. I tried to convince myself it was fine. I didn't want to start an argument on the very first day of our marriage. I had agreed to help at his company during the day. It was actually a full workday from 9 am to 4 p.m. The work was mostly sales administration, and I thought I could use my previous experience. But there was so much work, and the company was incredibly busy. Tom's brother, Henry, managed the day-to-day operations, and he taught me the basics of my new responsibilities. Lisa, you're a quick learner. It's a huge help. Please feel free to ask if you need anything, he said kindly. I was relieved. His words eased the anxiety that had been weighing on me since morning. That night, when we got home, Tom, who had mentioned he'd be back by 8 p.m., arrived to find me rushing to finish shopping, cooking, and cleaning. But as soon as he sat at the table, he started complaining about there not being enough sauce on the steak, or about the poor choice of side dishes. I wanted to share more, like how my day had been. I wanted him to ask, how was work? But Tom showed no interest, and my unease grew. Aren't you hot? I asked suddenly, noticing something odd. It was July, yet Tom had changed from his suit into another collared shirt, as if he needed to stay dressed up even at home. Not really. I'm sensitive to the cold, he replied dismissively. I didn't press him further, just accepted it. That night, too, there was no intimacy. In fact, we never shared any close moments. On weekdays, he would head straight to bed after showering. On his days off, he'd sleep until noon, then disappear alone. In Tom's routine, there was little space for us. We didn't have meals that felt cheerful, nor did we ever take walks around the neighborhood together. What's the point of being married? There isn't one. I found myself more anxious than when I was single, constantly concerned about Tom's mood. I had no room to relax, and the joy I once had in my life felt drained away. Tom criticized everything. He complained about a damp smell in the laundry, poorly ironed clothes, inadequate seasoning in my cooking, sloppy bathroom cleaning. The list went on and on. Once he started, he would keep repeating the same complaints, relentlessly picking at me. I was honestly exhausted. I felt constantly watched, on edge, and tired of walking on eggshells to avoid upsetting him. Why did I even get married? My work was fulfilling, but it was exhausting and unpaid. Friends even hinted it might be illegal, but I was too busy to investigate. Sometimes, I witnessed Tom's abusive behavior at work as well, calling employees into the meeting room to intimidate them. If I stepped in, I knew he'd be angry with me later, so all I could do was quietly signal for Henry to intervene. Then one day, something happened. Tom collapsed during work. He was taken to the hospital in an ambulance, and Henry and I went with him. My heart was racing, and I felt panicked. The doctor explained that Tom had developed peritonitis and required emergency surgery. We stayed in the waiting room for the procedure to end. I couldn't tell how much time had passed. Finally, a young doctor came out and announced the surgery's success, adding that if his recovery went well, he could return home within about 3 or 4 weeks. I was relieved, but well, that's impressive. I don't think I've ever seen such an elaborate tattoo. the doctor remarked as if to himself. A tattoo. Yes, on his back. Henry and I looked at each other in surprise. You're aware, aren't you, Tom's the dragon tattoo? Oh right, the dragon. Yes, it's impressive. Right. It's truly incredible, I replied reflexively, attempting to go along, but internally, I was in shock. Henry looked at me, concerned, but I couldn't exactly explain our lack of intimacy here. I decided to wait and ask Tom about it later. Could this be why he only ever wore long sleeves, even in the heat of summer? When I entered Tom's hospital room, he was conscious, though he looked uneasy. Why are you here? I didn't ask for you to come, he muttered in a hoarse, irritated tone, his face revealing a hint of discomfort. Thank goodness the surgery went well. Hey, about the tattoo on your back. Tom looked away, avoiding my gaze. Why did you keep it a secret? Obviously, because you and everyone else would have freaked out. Tom explained that previous girlfriends had broken up with him upon discovering his tattoo. Of course, any decent woman would be scared of it. He laughed bitterly. So why did you marry me then? Was everything a lie? A lie? I didn't lie about anything. You just didn't notice. Besides, I don't like you at all, Lisa. I just thought you'd work hard and do what I say. Being naive and inexperienced as you are. What? Not at all. His words cut through me. So he only wanted me to be a housekeeper. For free. Do you understand what kind of situation I'm in right now? Just leave already. And bring whatever I need tomorrow. Lisa, you'll keep working as my servant. He clearly wanted to get rid of us. And from then on, he refused to respond to any of my questions. Lisa, let's go, Henry said gently, guiding me out of the hospital as I stumbled, feeling as if my strength had left me. I sank onto a bench outside, utterly exhausted. Henry sat beside me and apologized. Lisa, I'm sorry. So, you didn't know about Tom's tattoo? With a somber expression, Henry explained further. Tom was a wild kid and ran off when he was young, joining a gang of sorts. That's likely when he got the tattoo. He did whatever he wanted back then, but when his money ran out, he asked our father, a powerful man, for help to leave the gang. In return, our father made him promise to work seriously at his company. I think our father wanted to keep an eye on him. A few years later, though, our father suddenly fell ill. I'd been handling the practical side of the business, but Tom insisted on his right to the position and took over as president. We're all really struggling with Tom's behavior. When you told me about his harassment, I realized you're the one seeing things clearly. With a determined expression, Henry added, Lisa, I have a plan. I want to prepare it while Tom is in recovery, and I'd like your help. If there's anything I can do. I felt resigned, thinking divorce was inevitable. Lisa, don't be naive. If you leave it as it is, he might never let you divorce him. Trust me on this. He was right. The idea of being stalked or forced back through threats terrified me. So I listened carefully to Henry's plan, ready for whatever it would take. A month later, I was busy working as acting president at Tom's company. Naturally, I'd moved out of Tom's house right away and hadn't visited him in the hospital since the day he was admitted. Tom sent countless messages and called daily, but I ignored every single one. I knew he must be furious. Before long, Tom was discharged and showed up at the company. Where's Lisa? She didn't even come to see me once. Did she run off? I won't let her get away with this. He is saying things like that. When he entered the president's office, he found all his belongings cleared out. What's going on? He muttered, confused. At that moment, a man with a calm demeanor spoke to Tom, undeterred by his usual intimidating attitude. It was the lawyer Henry had hired, a skilled negotiator. After careful planning, we had chosen today as the perfect moment. Congratulations on your recovery. I'm Ben, a lawyer, he said, handing Tom a business card. Now, let's get to business, Tom. You've been embezzling company funds. Henry is suing you. We have all the evidence, so there's no way to deny it. What? What are you talking about? This is absurd. Tom glared at Henry, who was standing silently behind the lawyer. Whether you pay it back or go to trial, you'll need funds. And the best way is to sell your shares to Henry at a fair price. You're kidding. At first, Tom was quite boisterous, but as the lawyer began to explain things in detail, he started to say less and less. We'll take a logical approach by exploiting Tom's dislike for complicated discussions, Henry had said. As the lawyer's complex explanations continued, Tom began to look bewildered. 2 hours later, he had sold all of his shares as president to Henry. He also signed a pledge to stay away from me and the divorce application. I don't care anymore. You two set me up, working together to take me down. He looked completely drained. Tom, Henry said, I've heard plenty from the employees, too. You've often been absent, haven't you? Turns out you were going off to gamble. And with the harassment you've been dishing out, no one's willing to put up with you anymore. From now on, we're done as brothers. And I don't want you involved with either Lisa or me. Whatever. You think I care? Tom spat, kicking the desk, clutching his abdomen in pain as he stormed out. As he left, employees who had been listening in the shadows emerged with smiles. I smiled, too. A new president is born. Fantastic. They cheered, congratulating Henry, who looked relieved at last. I finally felt a sense of relief after a long time and promptly went to submit my divorce papers. I would be working at Henry's company for the foreseeable future, but I had no idea what lay ahead. I might discover work I'm passionate about, or perhaps even remarry one day. This time, I wouldn't rush into anything just because I felt an urge to get married. If I meet someone new, I hope it will lead to true happiness. As for Tom, a month later, I heard he called Henry demanding money. Apparently, he hadn't changed at all. He had moved in with another woman, but their relationship was fraught with arguments. It finally escalated to the point where the police were involved, and he was evicted from his home. I also learned that he hadn't been able to find another job and was now living in a park, thinking about what life would have been like if I had continued living with Tom. Sends a shiver down my spine. I hope to live peacefully from now on. With that wish in my heart, I cherish each day as it comes.
I couldn't sleep at all, feeling restless on the couch until 6 a.m. Checking my smartphone, I found a message from my daughter Alice's husband, Kevin. Our grandchild was born safely. William, wake up! Alice did it. We need to get to the hospital. I shook my husband William awake and started getting ready in a hurry. Alice! Kevin! When we arrived at the hospital room, besides the two of them, there was another tiny life whose name we needed to know. Do you have a name picked out?
No, we hadn't decided yet since we didn't know the gender. But it's a girl.
Oh, I see. I hope you find a lovely name for her. Our granddaughter was sleeping in Alice's arms on the bed. Seeing her reminded me of Alice when she was a baby.
Mom, do you want to hold her?
Can I? Then I will. Her sleeping face, her weight, her scent, everything was exactly the same. The pure, adorable figure naturally softened my expression. Look, it's Grandma Jessica and Grandpa William, Alice said as she tried to pass the baby to William. But then, he started sweating and shaking violently. Hey, what's wrong?
Don't bring her close to me.
What was happening? I looked at Alice and Kevin, who were just as shocked as I was. It was clear I hadn't misheard him.
Dad, what are you talking about?
Is something wrong? No, it's not that. I feel an intense heat from her, like the terrifying heat from that fire.
William, is there anything I can do to help? William is blind. 3 years ago, there was a massive fire at the chemical plant where he worked, and he suffered severe burns to his eyes. Although his life was spared, he lost his sight.
Oh, it's you, Jessica. I'm fine now.
Despite his blindness, his kind and cheerful personality remained unchanged. The amount of struggle, the pain, and the effort he must have gone through is unimaginable. If you need anything, just let me know.
I've gotten used to it by now. You don't need to worry so much.
He always said that, but I could never fully stop worrying about him. Despite his misfortune, William had a unique skill. He could understand a person's true feelings through conversation. It wasn't any kind of supernatural power, just an acute sense that seemed almost magical to an outsider. It's well known that people who lose their sight often have heightened hearing, and there are scientific theories supporting this. In William's case, he was always perceptive to others' emotions, but after losing his sight, this sense became even sharper. Because of this, both Alice and I often sought his advice, a habit we couldn't break. That's how dependable William was. Most recently, when Alice introduced her boyfriend, that sixth sense proved its worth. It was about a year ago.
This is Kevin.
Nice to meet you for the first time. I'm Kevin McCarthy. Alice has always been so kind to me.
Kevin was a well-mannered and well-groomed young man, the kind of person you'd call a fine, upstanding citizen. Whether he was the type to not be easily intimidated or the type to not show his emotions, he was actively engaged in the conversation either way. Alice, on the other hand, seemed somewhat more nervous. That was understandable. Alice's father had a keen insight into reading between the lines, so if something caught his attention, he would point it out later. Kevin had apparently heard that William was visually impaired, but he probably didn't know about his special skill. However, even without relying on William, there were no obvious oddities or suspicious points. In fact, I could sense William's thoughtfulness in Kevin's words here and there, and I personally had a very good impression of him. The two were originally colleagues at work, and they became close as they interacted more and more, both at work and in their private lives. William was listening intently to their conversation. As it grew completely dark outside, William offered his thoughts on Kevin.
Regardless of his looks, he seems like a good person.
With those words, Alice and I let out sighs of relief. Of course, they stemmed from a sense of reassurance. On a whim, I tried to convey Kevin's appearance to William by giving an example of an actor he resembled.
Seriously? That personality with those looks? He's too perfect. He might get caught up in some bad business.
William said with a wry smile. From then on, Kevin often visited our home, brought by Alice. Even now, he was attentive to us, especially William, and again, there were no faults to be found. I felt a deep sense of relief and joy from the bottom of my heart, knowing that I could safely let Alice marry Kevin. Then a simple question occurred to me. Can I ask you something?
Yes, what is it?
Kevin is such a good person, so I'd like to know about his parents too. If it's okay, would you tell me about them? After a brief pause, Kevin smiled bitterly and apologetically avoided the topic.
I'm sorry. I lost my parents in an accident when I was young.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I apologize for asking about this. Still, Kevin's attitude didn't change.
No, it's okay. It couldn't be helped. But would you mind if I talked a little?
I was deeply impressed by his constant consideration for others. I had to respond to that respect. Yes, of course. Tell me anything.
Because I don't have my own parents anymore, I've been thinking. I couldn't properly show filial piety, so if I had the chance, I'd like to do it on their behalf. That way, I'm sure my parents would be happy, and I would feel a little more at ease.
This confession sounded to me like a cry from his heart. It was a flood of immeasurable emotions.
So, even in this situation, I feel like I'm projecting my own parents onto you. I want to make sure I have no regrets this time.
As soon as he finished speaking, I noticed William standing at the edge of my field of vision. William was quietly listening to Kevin's voice and nodding. That was the ultimate reassurance for me. After some time, the two were happily married. The ceremony went smoothly, and afterwards, Kevin moved into our home. Even after the marriage, Kevin continued to show concern for us, especially William. However, there was one thing that bothered me. Our house had a south-facing garden one step up from the road, and sometimes trash would be scattered there. 3 times last week, twice this week. I thought maybe crows or some other birds had dropped it, but that seemed too coincidental. However, even if someone was doing it on purpose, the damage wasn't severe enough to make a big fuss about, so for the time being, I decided to keep it to myself without telling anyone. Sometime after early summer had passed, we received a report from Alice and Kevin that they were expecting a baby. It was truly a joyous occasion. On the other hand, while we could manage with Kevin living with us, if there was going to be one more person, we would have to seriously consider moving. Given William's visual impairment, it might be a good idea to choose a barrier-free property. One night, as the two of us were pondering this, we heard the sound of leaves rustling in the hedge that served as a privacy screen in the front yard.
What was that sound?
It wasn't a gentle sound like the wind blowing, but a slightly rough sound, as if something had passed through. I had an uneasy feeling in my chest. I couldn't always rely on William at times like this. I made up my mind, grabbed the edge of the curtain, and flung it open with force.
Wow! What's wrong? What happened?
Lying on the shrubbery shrouded in darkness was the carcass of a crow. At that moment, I was convinced. The one throwing trash in our yard was not a crow, but a person with clear malicious intent. After contacting the city and the police and having them dispose of the carcass, I told the 3 of them about the situation and my speculations.
Why did you keep quiet about it?
The trash up until now seemed like it really could have been blown in by the wind. The dump isn't far away, so I thought it must have been the work of birds.
Now, let's think about what to do from here on. There's only so much we can do, though.
You're right. We could make the fence higher or something, but that wouldn't be a fundamental solution. Then, why don't we buy a security camera?
We discussed various opinions on the matter and decided to install a security camera. About a week after the camera was set up, the pregnant Alice discovered trash dumped in the yard once again. When we checked the camera to identify the culprit, their identity was revealed surprisingly easily. The security camera footage clearly showed a woman with long hair throwing a garbage bag she was holding in her right hand, capturing not only her build but also her face. Then, Alice muttered in a small voice,
This person. I feel like I've seen her somewhere before.
She thought about it for a while, but in the end, she couldn't seem to remember, so we decided to wait for Kevin to come home. That night, when we had Kevin check as soon as he got home, a startling revelation slipped out.
This person is Miranda. She's my coworker.
According to him, she had been persistently pursuing him, which had been troubling him. At first, he indirectly turned her down, but as her invitations gradually became more extreme, he clearly rejected her, revealing his relationship with Alice. Given that, it's not hard to imagine why she resorted to such an outrageous act this time.
So that's why she looked familiar.
But I wonder if the police will take action even if we report it. You know, I've heard stories about how they don't really respond to stalking cases.
I think it'll be fine since we have such solid evidence. For now, let's at least explain the situation.
Contrary to my expectations, the police took the matter seriously. Thanks to that, the woman named Miranda received a stern warning from the police and was forced by the company to write a written oath not to approach Alice and Kevin, and on top of that, was transferred to a regional branch. Her excuse was that she apparently aimed to harass them. The only thing that differed from my prediction was that her resentment was directed not at Kevin, but at Alice, who had stolen Kevin away. It was completely misdirected anger, to say the least. In any case, peace had returned to our home once again. The pregnancy period passed in the blink of an eye. And as Alice's belly finally grew large, it was time for her to be hospitalized for the delivery. As we were busy with this and that, from preparations for the hospital stay to things needed after the birth and so on, I suddenly remembered the past. When Alice was born, it was a difficult delivery. That was already more than 20 years ago, but everything vividly comes back to me as if it were yesterday. Before I knew it, I realized with deep emotion that I was now in the position of watching over it. It was nighttime when Alice started to feel labor pains. Therefore, William and I stayed home, and only Kevin would accompany her.
I'm excited.
I felt that William's words were a mix of pure joy and a hint of sadness. That's only natural, since he won't be able to see his first grandchild's face. As I was at a loss for how to respond to those words, William, perhaps sensing this, continued in a small voice.
Up until now, I've never deeply regretted losing my sight, but this time it's painful. I wanted to see my grandchild's face too.
I'll look at the baby for you. Didn't I vow to be your eyes?
Saying this won't change anything, and it puts you in a tough spot to respond.
As I thought, William sees right through even the little details.
Even with this strange power, I can't see my grandchild's face. Jessica, would you mind joining me for a drink?
Yes, of course. That's fine. There's only so much I can do. If drinking together can ease his pain even a little, I'll gladly keep him company. Unable to settle down and sleep, I found myself on the sofa at 6 a.m. When I checked my smartphone, there was a message from Kevin. It seemed our grandchild was safely born. William, wake up! Alice did her best. Let's go to the hospital. I shook the sleeping William beside me awake and hurriedly got ready. Perhaps because it was a weekday morning, the hospital felt emptier than usual. There were few people walking the hallways, and in the shop area, there were some people in pajamas who appeared to be inpatients. Amidst that, there was one shadow that gave off an indescribable feeling of suspicion. There wasn't anything particularly suspicious about this person, but they exuded a sense of not fitting in with their surroundings. William seemed to sense something too.
The atmosphere feels off. Is someone there?
When I told him about the figure, William muttered,
Don't carelessly approach.
And tapped the floor with his cane. I ignored that person and took William's hand as he started walking. Alice! Kevin! When we entered the hospital room, there was one more small life that we had to call by name, in addition to the two of them.
Good morning, you too. How are you feeling?
Morning. I'm fine. They said the baby is healthy too.
I see. That's great to hear.
As he said that, William grimaced, so I had him sit down for now. When I asked if he felt unwell, He said not really, so we decided to share in the joy for the moment. Have you decided on a name?
No. We didn't ask about the gender either, so we were planning to decide after the baby was born. By the way, it's a girl.
I see. I hope you give her a lovely name. Our granddaughter was sleeping in Alice's arms on the bed. Looking at that sight, what I remembered was, of course, the image of Alice in the past.
Mom, want to try holding her?
If it's okay with you, I will. That sleeping face, weight, and smell were all exactly the same. Her adorable, innocent appearance naturally softened my expression. Look, it's Grandma Jessica and Grandpa William. The very moment I tried to hand that little life to William. He was drenched in sweat, his whole face, and his body was shaking violently. Hey, what's wrong?
That child, don't bring her near me.
What in the world was happening? Thinking I must have misheard, I looked at their faces and saw that they were also surprised and shocked. It was clear, without even saying, that I hadn't misheard.
Wait a minute, Dad. What are you saying?
Are you feeling ill or something? No, that's not it. I feel a burning heat. I don't want to remember, but that terrifying heat like the fire back then.
Could it be that he sensed something from this baby? I handed our granddaughter to Alice and went to William's side. Gradually his trembling subsided, but he was still short of breath, breathing from his shoulders. Are you okay?
Yeah. I've calmed down a bit. Jessica, can we talk for a moment?
Sure. I left our daughter's hospital room as William told me to. I found a rest area a short walk away, so I informed him of it.
I'm sorry for startling you. That child is fine.
Can you tell me what happened? After a short pause, William slowly began to speak.
I probably picked up on someone's emotions nearby. It was so intense, unlike anything I've ever felt before. I was assaulted by burning resentment and anger. It was strangely real, so I lost my composure a bit. I'm sorry, bad timing.
No, don't apologize. It's not something you can control. But still, the resentment and anger. Unfortunately, I had an idea about that. That woman named Miranda. Could it be that she, who had received a stern warning from the police and was forced to write a pledge and transfer by the company, was approaching again? I knew the possibility was extremely low, but I just couldn't get it out of my head. Could it be that? Before I could finish, William interrupted me as if cutting me off.
Yeah, it's not impossible. And you said you saw a suspicious figure in the lobby earlier. They might still be nearby. Could you go look for that person?
Got it. I borrowed Kevin's help for the search. I couldn't very well walk around with William and Alice, but if I went alone, I might pass by without noticing. So I asked him to accompany me, as he could move around fairly freely and knew Miranda's face well. However, even after checking most of the areas accessible to the general public, we couldn't find her and had no choice but to return to the hospital room empty-handed. Of course, it would be fine if it turned out to be an unfounded worry.
In any case, the hospital is safer. There are more eyes around, and I can stay by your side the whole time. Jessica and William, you guys should go home and rest.
You're right. Then please take care of Alice.
Understood. And call me if anything happens.
And so William and I set off for home early, suppressing our restless feelings. William didn't show it in his demeanor, but he had wanted to look at our granddaughter's face more leisurely. Who would that child resemble more, Alice or Kevin? What kind of name would she be given? It seemed like another night of not being able to sleep well due to these thoughts. Around evening, a few hours after returning home, William began to utter ominous words once again.
It's back. I feel it again. A burning heat. What in the world is this?
According to him, it wasn't the kind that required a hospital visit. In that case, that strange ability of his was probably picking up on stronger emotions and going out of control. The problem was those strong emotions. At the moment, there was only one thing that came to mind, and it was extremely dangerous at that. I decided to seriously and carefully consider what I should do. Emotionally, I wanted the police to come right away, but I lacked definite proof. If I tried to confirm it myself, depending on the other party, forget about being able to stand up to them, there was no guarantee for my life. At that point, I suddenly remembered the existence of the security camera. That's right. If I check that, it might serve as some kind of evidence. I checked it with determination, but for better or worse, nothing was captured there. Just as I was about to reach a dead end, a ray of light shone through, like a saving grace from the heavens. A message that shook my smartphone. It was from Kevin.
Is everything okay over there?
I had unconsciously excluded him as an option, not wanting to disturb their first time alone as parent and child, but now that it had come to this, I had no choice but to borrow his help. I told Kevin everything as it was, and he replied briefly.
Got it. I'll head over now.
I was plagued by a sense of powerlessness. How pathetic it was that I couldn't do anything at a time like this and could only wait. Even though I knew full well that it wasn't my fault, I couldn't help but feel that way. Kevin returned in about 30 minutes. According to William, the heat he felt was gradually intensifying. If we were to believe that as is, it would mean danger was approaching. Immediately, Kevin and I set out to search around the house, and I grabbed a broom for self-defense. The sun had completely set, and while it wasn't pitch black, it was quite dark. That further fueled my fear. Neither Kevin nor I missed that sound. The noise coming from behind the house was clearly accompanied by a human presence.
Jessica, I'll go check the back, so please contact the police just in case.
I went back inside the house as Kevin said and called the police.
One suspect apprehended. I repeat, suspect apprehended.
How could this be? Someone was really lurking there. The profile I caught a glimpse of was undoubtedly that woman named Miranda. She was taken to a police car by multiple officers without making a scene. According to the police, she had a fire starter and a lighter on her. The worst possible outcome that implied goes without saying. The moment I realized we were safe, my legs gave out.
Are you okay?
I'm fine. My legs just lost strength when I felt relieved. Kevin's brave actions were wonderful, but what would have happened without William's mysterious power? William's trembling had completely subsided, and he was back to his usual cheerful self.
It gives me a lot to think about, but I'm glad everyone's safe. Am I more amazing than I thought? More amazing doesn't even begin to cover it. It's in the realm of superpowers at this point. I guess so. If I were a bit younger, I might have been able to help people more.
I later heard that Miranda had indeed snuck into the hospital where Alice was admitted that day, waiting for a chance to cause harm. Even worse, it seems her target this time was not Kevin or Alice, but our newborn granddaughter. Behind this was apparently a self-centered grudge that she had been demoted and transferred for stalking behavior at her new workplace, and then lost her place and was forced to quit. However, on that day, she abandoned her plan due to the large number of people around, but unable to let it go, she decided to set our house on fire. The true nature of the heat William felt was undoubtedly this evil intent. After being taken in by the police, she is in detention awaiting her due punishment. Just when I thought peace had finally arrived. Suddenly, people claiming to be Miranda's parents showed up.
We are terribly sorry for the great trouble our daughter has caused you.
When she is released, we will take her back to our hometown and keep a close eye on her.
It seems they didn't come to beg for forgiveness, but William happens to be out. He left this morning with Kevin driving to pick up Alice from the hospital. I can sense their sincerity, but I can't verify the true intent behind their words. Naturally, I didn't let them inside and dealt with them appropriately at the doorstep before sending them away. Afterwards, a chilling question came to mind.
How did they know where our house was?
Realizing this, I decided to propose expediting the moving plans I had been considering for a while. Alice was safely discharged from the hospital, and with our family growing by one, I told them everything that had happened, hiding nothing.
So that's what happened. In that case, we should move sooner rather than later.
William eagerly went out with Kevin and me to look at properties, reading the atmosphere of each place. Fortunately, we found a good plot of land and house that satisfied both William and us, so we decided the 5 of us would live there. I realized for the first time that I hadn't been able to fully believe in William's special ability until now. In this incident, William saved the lives of our entire family. I'm starting to think this is no mere talent, but a genuine superpower. Our new home is a comfortable barrier-free property. It's kind not only to William but also to Sarah, the newest addition to our family. With this, Alice and I, and even Kevin, can live with some peace of mind. The presence that threatened us is gone. I'm genuinely looking forward to starting a new life in this new place. Even so.
Hey, Kevin. Got a minute?
Yes? What is it? Is there something I can help with?
No, that's not it. I wanted to ask. Are you glad you ended up living with us? You're newlyweds with a newborn daughter, so you should be in the midst of happiness.
What are you saying? I told you before, I wanted to show my filial piety. I've always longed for a family, so this is perfect. No, this is precisely why I'm happy.
As I fell silent, he continued.
Besides, I'm truly grateful to both of you.
Grateful?
Yes. If it wasn't for William, who knows what would have happened to us by now? And Jessica, it's because you believed in him that we avoided the worst. If either of you were missing, the outcome would have been uncertain. So filial piety and repaying a debt of gratitude. Just having that chance makes me.
Thank you.
At least this time, I can tell without borrowing William's power. There's no way Kevin is lying.
I canceled your reservation only,
Nicole said with a smirk on her face, arms crossed as she blocked the entrance to the restaurant where I had made a reservation. Once again, I was the only one being treated like this. Nicole stood there, grinning from ear to ear, clearly enjoying my misery. I had reached my breaking point. I had endured this treatment for far too long, and I couldn't see the point in putting up with it anymore.
Which department are you from?
I asked, my voice trembling with anger.
Huh?
Nicole looked taken aback by my sudden question. It was my turn to fight back. My name is Emily, and I work for a trading company in the city. I joined the company over 20 years ago, and back then, I had to work incredibly hard to secure a job offer. Ever since then, I've been running non-stop, always putting the company and my colleagues first. Now, I'm a manager in the Human Resources Department. Some of my peers have climbed the corporate ladder faster than me, but I've had to take maternity and childcare leave several times as I have 4 children, which has slowed down my career progression. This difference is particularly evident when compared to Nicole, who joined the company at the same time as me. I first met Nicole back in high school. We ended up in the same class during the summer of our sophomore year, and that's when it all began.
Emily, you're so gloomy, aren't you?
Those were the first words she said to me when she sat down next to me. It's true that I wasn't the most cheerful person, but no one had ever pointed it out to me like that before. And she said it with a straight face, not even a hint of a smile. In other words, Nicole genuinely believed that I was a gloomy person. I could have just brushed it off, thinking that she was the type of person who blurted out whatever was on her mind. But after that incident, Nicole seemed to have decided that I was someone she could tease without consequences, and she started picking on me at every opportunity.
Did you finish the homework? I was too busy to do it, so let me copy yours.
I doubt she ever completed a single homework assignment on her own. She always copied my homework and submitted it as her own, regardless of whether there were mistakes or not. Because she copied my work, we sometimes made the same mistakes, and when the teacher noticed, they would call both Nicole and me to the staff room. Of course,
Emily copied my homework,
Nicole would say. The teacher, without even bothering to check the facts, would yell at me. Back then, teachers were much stricter than they are now, and it was common for them to take a rough attitude towards students who didn't listen to them or follow the rules. Even after that incident, Nicole kept trying to copy my homework, and when I refused, not wanting to go through that experience again, Nicole started bullying me.
It stinks. Doesn't this classroom smell bad? Emily is here, isn't she? Is it because of you?
Nicole said, her disdain for me so obvious that anyone could see it. She no longer cared how much others tried to defend me. If she decided she didn't like someone, she wouldn't be satisfied until everyone else disliked them too. She even started bad-mouthing the people who stood up for me. As a result, the kids who didn't want to be on Nicole's bad side naturally distanced themselves from me. Looking back, I realized that was the only way they could protect themselves, but it was a painful experience for my young heart. When we became juniors, Nicole and I ended up in different classes. I thought I could finally live a normal high school life, but I was completely mistaken. No matter where I was, if Nicole spotted me, she would rush over and make a snide remark.
That hairstyle is so lame. You should stop wearing it. Did you gain weight? Your face isn't much to look at, so you should at least watch your figure. Do you enjoy being expressionless all the time? If you don't smile more, you might never get married.
She didn't need my response, so as soon as she finished speaking, she would quickly turn around and leave. The physical bullying had stopped, but she had started constantly harassing me emotionally instead. I could have ignored it if I tried, but the memories from the previous year would come flooding back, and my mood would sink. I couldn't seem to escape Nicole's curse. I finally managed to get away from Nicole after graduating from high school. I had decided to attend a local state university, while Nicole went to a private university some distance away. I thought I would never see Nicole again, and the harassment and snide remarks would finally stop. Just thinking about it lifted my spirits, and I was able to enjoy a very happy college life. Even if there was a reunion when we were adults, I thought we would both be mature enough by then not to have any unpleasant experiences. Maybe there would come a day when Nicole and I could laugh and talk together. There was definitely a time when I had such faint hopes. However, my reunion with Nicole came much sooner than expected. When I graduated from college and started working at my new company, Nicole was there.
I never thought we'd meet again in a place like this. Let's get along from now on,
she said with a grin. I was devastated. My heart, which I thought had completely recovered, was utterly crushed on my first day at work, and I seriously considered not going back. But since we were in different departments, I managed to keep going. Then, in my 5th year at the company, I married my boyfriend from college, gave birth, and took a leave of absence to raise my child. During that time, Nicole kept advancing in her career, and the gap between us only widened. I was too busy to feel frustrated, as I was constantly juggling work and childcare in my daily life. The company I work for has several branch offices, and it's a rule that the sales department rotates between each branch every few years. Unlike me, who works in human resources, Nicole is in sales, so she has been transferred frequently. I don't know if that's the reason, but she has never been married. Or rather, she's the type who is perfectly fine without getting married. People have different opinions on that matter, so I don't deny it, but whenever there's a company drinking party, she always picks on me.
Marriage is the graveyard of life. Having children is out of the question. I can't believe someone's life ends at the manager level like you,
she says with a smirk. Even though there are other female employees below the manager level, Nicole only sees me. Many people give her cold looks, but she's happy as long as she can blame me.
You don't even have time for yourself, right? You can't study to advance your career. Seriously, marriage and childbirth are meaningless. I'm sorry, you're a manager, right?
She says with a mocking tone. She's really a spiteful person. No matter how old she gets, Nicole remains the same. So, when we become adults during college, it was just my wishful thinking. The moment I gave up on the idea that she would be like this for the rest of her life, I stopped caring about Nicole. Maybe she didn't like that, so she started picking on me more often, but only at drinking parties. We work in different departments, so we don't interact on a daily basis. Being harassed a couple of times a year at drinking parties is not a big deal. I don't know if it's because she can spend money on herself, but I've been jealous of Nicole, who remains youthful no matter how many years pass. However, I've overcome that by reminding myself that people are different, and I am who I am. Even if I envy her, Nicole and I are different people. Naturally, we will lead different lives. Just a slight difference in values can completely change one's life, so there's no need to worry about it. Since I started thinking that way in my mid-30s, I haven't paid much attention to Nicole. However, Nicole's persistent harassment continues. Rather, it seems to be getting worse with each passing year. She's always angry, to the point where I wonder if she's going through menopause.
Hey! Every year, new employees join the company, but why are they all useless? You're doing your job properly in the human resources department, right?
She yells.
Of course. We carefully assess their personalities and make judgments,
I reply calmly. After turning 40, I gradually became stronger and started talking back to Nicole. At first, Nicole was surprised, but recently, a loop has formed where I talk back, Nicole gets even angrier, and I fall silent.
Then why are there only useless people every year? Or are you sending useless people to where I am? Is this harassment?
She shouts, her face turning red with rage.
That can't be true, right? It's only natural that new employees can't do their job well. It's also the supervisor's job to train them,
I respond, trying to keep my composure. However, she doesn't seem satisfied and throws the contents of the glass she was holding onto my head. Nearby employees scream, but I mustn't be fazed by this. It will only make Nicole happier.
I don't want to hear that from you. How dare you talk to me like that? You're just a manager, and I'm going to be the director of the sales department starting next spring. Do you understand your position?
Nicole hissed, her eyes narrowing with disdain.
I'm sorry. I'll be more careful from now on,
I replied, trying to keep my voice steady.
I've always hated that attitude of yours. You put on a calm face and act like you have nothing to do with it. That's why you've always had few friends, isn't it?
She sneered, her words dripping with venom. After saying what she wanted, Nicole sat down in her seat. My colleagues in the Human Resources Department worriedly brought me a towel and said, "Don't let it get to you." But I wasn't even paying attention to her in the first place. If she wants to say something, let her say it. Whether I resist or not, Nicole will just repeat the same thing over and over again. This incident would later be dubbed the Emily-drenched incident. Then, when spring arrived, it was time to make reservations for the annual welcome party for new employees. This party is, of course, for the new employees, but to celebrate, a few people from each branch office participate. Naturally, the most people from the head office participate, and about a dozen or so from each branch office. Most of them are managers to directors, with relatively young employees mixed in. The purpose of having younger employees is to ensure that the new employees can enjoy the welcome party without being too nervous. The idea was that having younger colleagues around might help ease the tension a bit. And when I looked at the list of participants sent from each branch office, I saw Nicole's name. She would naturally be participating since she was becoming a director this spring. I completed the reservations for a total of 100 people, including new and current employees, decided on the seating arrangement, and then sent the list to the participants. With that, my work was done for the time being. The next important task was to successfully finish the entrance ceremony and welcome party. Then, the day of the entrance ceremony arrived. The entrance ceremony is held at the head office, regardless of the branch office assignment. The branch managers from each office gathered there, and it was a grand entrance ceremony with much celebration. After a brief tour of the head office and an explanation of the schedule to a certain extent, it was already evening.
Now, let's move to the venue for the welcome party. Please take your belongings and board the bus,
I announced, my voice carrying over the excited chatter. As soon as I finished my work as the human resources manager, I started preparing for the move without a moment to catch my breath. After confirming that everyone had boarded the bus, we departed. Once we arrive at the venue, the director of the Human Resources Department will take over the proceedings, so my work will be done. This year, we ordered a course from a high-class hotel known for its delicious steak, so all that's left is to enjoy it. Upon arriving at the venue, I confirmed that the new employees were getting off the bus, and then I got off as well. As I looked up, thinking about going to the restroom to touch up my makeup, the person who greeted me was none other than Nicole.
Thanks for your hard work. You can go home now,
Nicole said with a smirk.
What? Wait a minute, what do you mean?
There was no reason for Nicole to tell me to go home. I asked, startled by her sudden words.
Can't you figure it out? I canceled your reservation. That's why I'm telling you that you can go home now,
she said, her voice dripping with condescension. I couldn't understand. Why would she need to do something like that? Because she's always hated me? Or was there another reason?
I can't stand the thought of eating while looking at your face. Just the idea of someone like you being in the same space as this luxurious meal makes me sick. Don't get cocky, okay?
Nicole sneered, her eyes narrowing. I see. Nicole was confident that she was absolutely above me now that she had become a director. Certainly, even though we were in different departments and branches, there was a big gap between a director and a manager. I acknowledged that Nicole had worked hard to advance her career, and I honestly thought it was amazing. But there was no reason for her to do something like this to me. After the previous Emily-drenched incident, not being able to eat the steak, and the harassment that had been going on since high school, it was all too much. I had reached my limit.
Which branch are you from?
I asked, feeling the corners of my mouth turning up. I was sure I had a big smile on my face right now. However, the words that flew out of my mouth were not the kind I usually used. Nicole seemed surprised by this.
Huh?
She said, taken aback. But then, as if she had thought better of it, she returned to her usual stern expression. Rather, she looked as if she was about to say, "What are you talking about?"
What do you mean? Which branch? You in human resources should know that best, shouldn't you? Don't tell me you've forgotten that too. It must be tough being someone with such a small capacity,
Nicole said, still looking down on me even in this situation. That made sense. No matter how much someone she had always looked down on talked back to her, she still believed she was above them in the end.
That's true, indeed. Well then, I'll make sure you can never return to the head office. Good luck spending the rest of your life at a branch office,
I said, the corners of my mouth still turned up. I must have accumulated more stress than I realized without even noticing it. Every time I talked back to Nicole, something inside me was being released. I even thought that if this was the case, I should have started talking back to her much earlier. However, I could imagine that it would have been troublesome if I had done so, so in the end, this timing might have been for the best.
What nonsense are you spouting? Make sure I can never return to the head office? You're just a manager, so where do you get off acting so high and mighty? If I tell the director of human resources something like that, then…
Nicole began, her words trailing off.
That won't happen. Not anymore,
I said calmly.
Huh? I have no idea what you're talking about. What, do you think you've become someone important?
She said, her words growing harsher as she became more and more irritated. It couldn't be helped. I, who had always been obedient, was being more assertive than during the previous drenching incident, and on top of that, I was saying things that made no sense.
I don't think I've become important. I have become important. That's right. I guess it can't be helped if you don't know. After all, you're at a branch office,
I said with a smirk, feeling a sense of satisfaction wash over me.
What? I'm getting really irritated. What are you going to do by making me even angrier?
Nicole hissed, her face contorted with rage.
I'm not going to do anything. Anyway, I want to eat my steak, so I'm going inside,
I said nonchalantly, brushing past Nicole. As she reached out to grab my arm, I deftly avoided her and quickly entered the venue. Ever since we were young, I had always been quick on my feet, while Nicole was slow. It was the same when we were walking. People often said that Emily from Human Resources walked fast, while Nicole from Sales walked slow.
Wait! What do you mean? You've become important? You must be joking!
Nicole shouted, panting and getting emotional as she tried to catch up with me, just as I had predicted. It looked like she was about to start running, so I decided to run ahead to avoid being caught. Thanks to that, I was able to enter the venue first without Nicole catching up to me, only to be greeted by the stern face of the Human Resources Director who said, "You're late." I shrugged my shoulders and glanced behind me. Nicole was completely out of breath, having run with all her might.
This isn't a joke. What's the big idea, making me run like this?
She gasped, her chest heaving. Without responding to or retorting Nicole's words, I quickly sat down in my seat. It seemed that my reservation had indeed been cancelled, but the cancellation happened this morning, and since they had the ingredients, they said they could prepare it right away. After thanking my colleague in Human Resources who had taken care of the troublesome matter, Nicole also took her seat. Seeing that everyone was settled, the director began his speech. The welcome party proceeded smoothly, and just as it was about to end, the president made an appearance. I could see the faces of the new employees, who had been loosened up by the alcohol, tighten with tension. I felt bad for them, but it couldn't be helped since the president was also working.
Sorry I'm late. Did you enjoy the meal?
The president asked, his voice soft and gentle. At his words, the faces of the nervous new employees began to relax. They responded cheerfully, and the president seemed satisfied.
Well then, I'm sure you'll face many hardships from now on, but I want you to do your best. For your bright future,
he said, raising a glass he had picked up nearby. Everyone raised their glasses as well, ready to toast. But just as I thought we were about to drink, what flowed vigorously onto my head was wine. Screams erupted from the employees around me. The new employees were also shocked. They probably never thought they would encounter such a harsh reality of society at their own welcome party. In fact, even I couldn't have imagined something like this happening. I didn't need to turn around to know who had done it.
You better explain what this is all about,
Nicole demanded, her voice trembling slightly with rage. Of course, Nicole was the only one who would do something like this to me. Moreover, her voice sounded quite angry and was shaking a little. Suppressing the urge to be dumbfounded that she would still pour wine on me even while trying to contain her anger, I turned to face her.
Nicole, what do you think you're doing?
I asked, trying to keep my composure.
How can you say that with a straight face? Have you already forgotten what you said to me earlier?
She retorted, her eyes flashing with fury. I see. It seems Nicole is quite tenacious. She's acting as if everything she's done to me up until now never happened, and she can't forgive what I said to her earlier. The fact that she's still angry like this even after enjoying the party means she must be really furious. Thinking that she's the type to hold a grudge, I wiped my face with the towel brought to me by the restaurant staff. However, Nicole even snatched that towel away and glared at me.
What are you doing while I'm talking? Answer my question. What was that all about? You become important? Stop with the ridiculous jokes, will you?
She snarled, her face contorted with rage. My face was still soaking wet, but there was nothing I could do about it. I stood up and looked Nicole directly in the face. In that gap, I could see the director tactfully sending the new employees home beyond Nicole. Thinking it was a good decision, I said.
I wasn't trying to do anything. I was just stating a fact. I'm asking because I don't understand what that fact is. You can't even comprehend that? Seriously, have you not grown at all since high school?
Nicole sneered, her lips curling into a mocking smile. I wanted to say, "That's you, isn't it?" but I restrained myself and carefully chose my words. I might be out of line for doing something like this, but this is a high-class hotel restaurant. If I make any more blunders like raising my voice even louder, I might get banned from entering. The food, the steak, and the wine were all delicious, so I wanted to use this place again next year if possible. That's why I had to avoid getting banned at all costs.
Anyway, let's get out of here. We're causing trouble for the restaurant staff,
I said, trying to defuse the situation.
That has nothing to do with me. I'm not moving from here until I hear an explanation from you.
Nicole declared stubbornly. She really is a persistent person. I wonder what she thinks about everything she's done to me up until now. I wasn't calm enough to deal with her childish selfishness. The muscles in Nicole's face twitched slightly, and she might be holding back a little, but everyone here probably thinks that Nicole, who ruined the atmosphere, is in the wrong. As I was wondering what to do, someone placed a hand on my shoulder.
What's going on here?
A familiar voice asked.
President?
I exclaimed, my eyes widening in surprise. Finally, Nicole took a step back from me. Just a moment ago, her face was so close to mine that I thought she might stick to me, so I could finally take a deep breath. Glancing to the side, I saw the president standing there with a calm expression.
I'm asking what this is all about,
he said, his voice maintaining a calm composure, yet somehow sounding cruel. The president might be irritated that the welcome party, which he thought would end on a good note, had turned into this kind of atmosphere. Well, you see, Emily has been looking down on me. She said that even though I'm a director, I'm just at a branch office. She said that even though she's just a manager, she's at the head office, so she's above me. Nicole stammered, her eyes darting around nervously. Here we go, I thought. She had always been exceptionally good at making excuses since high school. It seems she's still very good at blaming me, even after becoming a working adult. The president looked at me, so I denied it.
I don't think the Emily I know would ever do something like that,
he said, his brow furrowing slightly. That's not true. She's actually a cunning person. Even if she's in the wrong, she blames others. She's that kind of person. We've been together since high school, but it seems she hasn't changed. Nicole insisted, her voice rising in pitch. It's like she's introducing herself. She's not considering at all that she's the kind of person she just described. This must be what it means to be dumbfounded and unable to say anything. No matter what I say, Nicole will probably make excuses, and I was already tired of getting involved.
I see. So, you're saying that you were looked down upon by Emily, right?
The president asked, his eyes narrowing slightly. Yes.
I've been troubled by her lies ever since high school. To think that it would continue even after we became adults.
Nicole said, dramatically covering her eyes. It's a fake cry. Everyone here probably thinks so. The employees here have had at least some involvement with Nicole. In other words, everyone knows she's lying.
Are you talking about yourself?
The president asked, his voice calm but cutting.
What?
Nicole said, surprised, removing her hand from her eyes. As expected, she wasn't crying at all, and her makeup wasn't smudged.
Wait a minute. Were you listening? I'm talking about Emily. I'm not talking about myself,
she exclaimed, her face flushing with anger. She's probably the kind of person who has never once thought that she's in the wrong. Yet, she must have been shocked to be asked by the president if she was talking about herself.
I never thought you would say something like this. This is already a respectable insult. I'll sue you,
she declared the moment she thought he didn't believe her. She's even saying such things to the president. I wonder if she understands her position. No, she probably doesn't understand, which is why she can have this attitude. Besides, Nicole must have an incredibly good outward appearance. The fact that Nicole boasts the top sales performance in the sales department is probably thanks to her eloquence and good looks. It's frustrating, but Nicole is good at her job. However, even considering that, Nicole's attitude within the company was unacceptable.
Actually, I've been getting complaints from employees. They say they're being harassed by an employee named Nicole,
the president said, his eyes fixed on Nicole. Nicole glared at me. She probably thinks I said it, but she's completely mistaken.
Even though they refuse, she keeps persistently inviting them to meals and asking them personal questions on a daily basis. They say it doesn't work even when they ask her to stop,
he continued, his voice stern. Nicole's face changed color. It seems she realized I wasn't the one saying it. However, she still doesn't seem to know who is saying such things, so she looks around with a suspicious look on her face. Then, a male employee walked up to us.
I never thought you would say something like this. This is already a respectable insult. I'll sue you,
Nicole exclaimed, her voice shrill with anger.
Cody? Why?
She said, her eyes widening in surprise.
What do you mean, why? I always tell you, don't I? I have a girlfriend. I can't do anything that would make her insecure, right?
Cody said, his brow furrowing. Nicole's face turned pale. The employee named Cody, who had approached us, was a sales representative working at the same branch office as Nicole. He had just joined the company as a new employee last year and was still very much a newcomer.
But, I mean, you used to go out with me when I invited you to meals at first,
Nicole said, her voice trailing off.
That's because you were my superior. I thought it was just a social interaction as working adults. I never thought I would be invited so frequently,
Cody said, shaking his head. For this employee, who has a reputation for being friendly, to say this much, Nicole must have been quite persistent in her invitations. I think it must have been a real nuisance. Shocked by the betrayal, Nicole sat down on the spot.
And you know what? We're getting complaints from clients too. They're saying they're having trouble because our employees are being seduced,
the president added, his expression grim. Nicole's shoulders shook. There must be something that comes to mind for her. There's no need to specifically mention it, but just saying that much is as good as saying it's true.
Who cares about that? My story doesn't matter. Right now, I want to know the truth about why Emily said she's more important than me. And why is Cody, who just joined the company, talking to the president so casually?
Nicole cried out, her voice rising in pitch. She probably didn't like being the only one blamed. She tried to shift the focus back to my story. However, the president casually revealed the truth about that as well.
What, you didn't know? I thought I had properly explained it to the other employees, but did the email not reach you?
He asked, raising an eyebrow.
Huh, email?
Nicole said, her eyes widening in confusion. Yes, email. I'm stepping down as president this fiscal year. I just found out I have an illness. I'm going to focus on treatment. The president explained, his voice calm and matter of fact. Nicole still doesn't seem to understand and is getting flustered. It's the president's fault for not saying much, but Nicole's lack of perception is also a problem. I provide an additional explanation to Nicole.
The president is being replaced. I'm still an apprentice, but I'll be working as the acting president for the rest of this year,
I said, looking Nicole directly in the eye. Nicole jumped up and rushed towards me. She was so close that if I waited any longer, she might have stuck to me.
Don't joke around. Why would someone like you be the acting president? Don't tell me you seduced the president. Otherwise, there's no reason for you to become the acting president out of nowhere,
she exclaimed, her face contorted with disbelief and anger.
You didn't know even though you were classmates? Emily is my niece. I didn't have any children, so I decided to entrust this company to Emily, my brother's daughter,
the president explained calmly, his gaze unwavering. Nicole was at a loss for words. She probably never thought that the president and I were related. I never thought I would actually become the president, and I had never told anyone that my uncle was running the company.
So, Emily is really going to be the president?
Nicole asked, her voice trembling slightly.
That's right. And Cody, the one you kept persistently inviting, is Emily's nephew,
the president added, nodding his head. This time, Nicole glared at Cody. Cody shrugged his shoulders awkwardly but said clearly,
I'm not acting high and mighty because I'm related to the president. I was really troubled, so I consulted with them. I told them that you wouldn't stop no matter how many times I asked.
It might sound like an excuse, but Nicole's persistence is not normal. You can tell from the fact that she has consistently disliked me since high school. She must have persistently hit on Cody to the point of being fed up with it. Moreover, Cody is a very calm type of person, so he's not the kind of person who would dislike someone like this after just one incident. That's the extent of what Nicole has done.
You became the director of the sales department this spring, right? But that doesn't mean you're the most important person in everything,
the president said, his tone firm but not unkind.
I understand that,
Nicole mumbled, her eyes downcast.
But you don't understand, which is why you persistently hit on him with a face that says the director's word is absolute, right?
The president continued, raising an eyebrow. Perhaps because she suddenly felt embarrassed, Nicole's face turned bright red. She had said so adamantly that she would never get married, but this was her reaction.
It's not just because he's a relative, but as I said earlier, we're getting complaints from clients. As the president, I have to punish you,
the president said, his voice stern. At the president's continued words, Nicole went limp.
Starting next month, you'll be going to a branch office in the countryside. You'll probably never come back, so keep that in mind,
he said, his expression serious.
Wait a minute. Why do I have to go to the countryside?
Nicole cried out, her eyes wide with panic.
Don't look down on the countryside. You should be able to demonstrate your full potential anywhere. After all, you're the top sales performer,
I retorted, a slight smirk on my lips. When I talked back, Nicole glared at me while biting her lip. She probably wanted to jump at me in a rage, but with the president there, she couldn't go that far. Now you won't have to see my face that you hate so much, I said with a smile. At that, Nicole finally collapsed with a look of despair on her face. Seeing her like that, the president called out to the restaurant staff and had them help Nicole up and take her away. In the end, she couldn't walk on her own and left the venue as if she were being dragged. Afterwards, Nicole was officially transferred to a branch office in the countryside, but she refused.
If I have to go to a place like that, I'll quit this company,
she declared, her voice filled with frustration and anger. For her, going to the countryside must have been that much of a blow. She might have thought that with her achievements, she could get a job anywhere, but in this circle, it had spread that Nicole was quite a schemer in a bad way. She was probably the only one who didn't know that, and it would be difficult for her to find another job. Moreover, because she caused the Emily-drenched incident twice, rumors had apparently spread in the restaurant circle as well. Since she has a pretty face and stands out, people will probably find out quickly. In the end, she chose to stay here instead of going to the countryside, but she struggled with the difficulty of living in this area and returned to her hometown. Every time she sees my mother at the supermarket or grocery store, she reportedly snaps at her, saying,
"It's all because of your daughter."
But my mother apparently handles her appropriately. Until now, she seemed to care so much about her appearance that you'd wonder how much she spent on beauty, but now she doesn't seem to have that kind of leeway. Her face is covered in spots, you can see some gray hair, and she apparently wears a gray, worn-out sweatshirt and spacing out in the park every day. From her perspective, it's as if she lost her greatest purpose in life. By the way, I billed her for the cleaning fee for the clothes that got dirty in the second drenching incident, but she still hasn't paid, so I'm thinking of going to see her with a business card that says Acting President. My husband laughed and said I have a bad personality, but considering everything that's happened until now, this is the least she can do to satisfy me. I'm now busy every day as the acting president. I realize how difficult being the president is and feel proud of my uncle. Cody was also happy that now that Nicole was gone, he could work vigorously without feeling suffocated. As the future president, I'm determined to continue creating an environment where everyone can work comfortably, and I intend to keep living each day to the fullest. I'm selling this house because I'm moving in with my girlfriend. Dad, who betrayed Mom, further hurt her. This house was in Dad's name, but Mom had contributed a significant amount of money to build it, and she loved this house. Yet, Dad decided to claim everything for himself without considering Mom's feelings. Now, 12 years after my parents' divorce, I've come to understand things I couldn't back then and decided to take revenge on Dad. I couldn't forgive Dad for living comfortably after hurting Mom, who had struggled to raise me. Does your company condone affairs? That's what I told them during my interview at Dad's company. My name is Chloe. I'm a 21-year-old senior in college, currently job hunting. When I was in 4th grade, my parents divorced, and we moved to Mom's parents' house, which meant changing schools and my entire environment, which led to some mental instability. I wasn't very sociable, so making friends was hard. Being a child of divorce, I was often left out, and I didn't have the courage to initiate conversations. For the 2 years from the transfer until graduating elementary school, I had no close friends and felt isolated, often getting sad remembering friends from my previous school. Moreover, Mom was working all day, so our time together decreased, and I spent more time with my grandparents. My grandparents were caring, but having always been with my parents, I found it hard to open up to them. However, things settled down when I started middle school. There were many students from different elementary schools, so I finally met people who didn't prejudge me for my parents' divorce. I made friends and slowly started to become happier, leaving behind my constant sadness. Determined not to burden Mom, I focused more on my studies. I got a scholarship that covered tuition for college, leading to a busy life filled with studies and part-time work. I wanted to make Mom's life peaceful and happy, so even in my busy life, I felt fulfilled. I've become more sociable than before, but the trauma from my past still lingers. Until 4th grade, When my parents divorced, I lived a normal life with both mom and dad. I was a shy child, so even though I had friends, I mostly spent weekends with my family. I think I was a child who loved my parents dearly. We used to have family meals together every morning and evening, and after dinner, we'd spend time together as a family. But then Dad started coming home late from work, and there were nights he wouldn't return before I went to bed. Dad was already in a managerial position then, and Mom told me he couldn't come home because of the responsibilities and overtime. Even though I felt lonely, I understood that it was Dad's job that provided for our current lifestyle. So I hoped Dad would be able to finish work earlier. This routine continued until one night, I woke up and heard my parents arguing. This was something that had never happened before, and curiosity overcame my anxiety. I cautiously approached to see what was happening. Dad, angry and carrying his belongings, stormed out of the living room.
Enough! I'd rather be with my girlfriend than you. We're getting a divorce.
Mom started crying at his words, but Dad ignored her and headed for the front door.
Dad!
Knowing what divorce meant, I feared I'd never see Dad again, so I ran after him and clung to him, hoping the kind dad who used to play with me would stop.
Get out of my way!
But Dad, who had never been rough with me before, glanced at me coldly and shook me off without hesitation. Thrown harshly, I rolled down the hallway, bruising myself. I burst into tears from the shock of Dad's anger and being pushed away. And the pain made the reality even harder to bear. Confused about why Dad suddenly became cold towards me, I couldn't stop crying. Mom hugged me while I cried, but Dad left the house without looking back, even though I was crying. Seeing Dad leave like that, I felt abandoned and cried even harder. This incident made me afraid to trust anyone but Mom for a while, and I think it made me even more introverted. Dad never returned after that, and we continued living in the house, but a few days later, he came back. I briefly hoped we could be a family again, but that hope was quickly shattered.
I'm selling this house because I'm moving in with my girlfriend. Get out.
Dad showed Mom some documents. I remember this house being built when I was in first grade. Mom was delighted to have our own home. I was sure they had built it together. So Mom protested Dad selling the house on his own, but since it was in his name, she had to give up. Thus, Mom and I were forced to move to her parents' house. As a child, I was not privy to the dealings between Mom and Dad that followed. However, I often wondered why Mom worked so hard, even though she probably should be receiving compensation and child support. I assumed part of her effort was for my sake, but I thought we would have more financial leeway if Dad had been paying child support. Curious, I asked my grandparents about it during high school. I thought Mom wouldn't want to tell me, and it must have been a painful topic for her too, so I couldn't ask her. According to my grandparents, it seemed Dad had fled without paying any alimony or child support. Mom had contacted him numerous times about the missing payments, but after he became unreachable, she decided to prioritize our future and let it go. As I suspected, their divorce was due to Dad's infidelity, confirming that he had betrayed our family. Hearing this from my grandparents, I understood why Mom worked so hard and felt a surge of anger towards Dad. Mom, it seemed, had given up pursuing Dad further and hadn't even tried to find his address to urge him to pay for alimony or child support. Though I was angry with Dad, who didn't seem to have much remorse, my desire to ease Mom's burdens quickly overshadowed it. I wanted to make sure Mom, who always prioritizes me over herself and is busy from morning till night, could have some time to relax. I've always thought that Mom should take more care of herself. Using my anger towards Dad as motivation, I doubled down on my studies, aiming to land a good job to assist Mom. The thought of Dad living carefree was frustrating, but I tried not to dwell on it, focusing instead on our current life, just like Mom. As a university student beginning to think about job hunting, I was organizing our storage to create a better resume. I hoped to recall past experiences for my self-promotion. While sorting through storage, I found letters from friends before I transferred schools in elementary, immersing myself in memories. Then, I came across an unfamiliar box. Curious, I opened it and found it contained documents from an investigation into Dad's infidelity. I was shocked to find these hidden away. Though I had tried to stop thinking about Dad, I still wanted to know what had happened between my parents. Compelled, I began to read the documents. As I read the story in more detail than what I heard from my grandparents, my desire for revenge against Dad grew. My grandparents probably had chosen their words carefully or didn't know the full extent. Reading further, I realized Dad had done worse things than I had imagined. He had been unfaithful for longer than I thought, and it seemed he hadn't even tried to hide his late nights from Mom. His affair was with a woman 6 years his junior, who had had a difficult life herself. After a car accident left her mom dead, she had been working since she was a student because her dad had after effects. Despite having a more challenging life than mine, how could she not feel remorse for destroying a family? In the evidence photos of the affair, the woman walking arm in arm with Dad was visibly pregnant. I couldn't help feeling disgusted seeing the two of them looking so content together. To anyone unaware, they would seem like a happy couple. Yet in reality, they were two people who didn't care about the misery they brought upon Mom and me. I had tried not to dwell on my anger towards Dad, but seeing this, it was impossible. I felt an overwhelming urge to make them suffer, but I managed to hold back. I thought about how Mom would be saddened if anything happened to me and about the potential future of their child, who must be around middle school age by now, 12 years after the divorce. I couldn't forgive Dad and his mistress, but acting on my emotions would only harm their child, causing them the same pain I endured. I didn't want to stoop to Dad's level, and that thought stopped me. However, the anger was too strong to ignore. A few days later, on a weekend, I decided to visit the house mentioned in the investigation report. I doubted they would still be there after all this time, but I needed to check. Upon arrival, I found the house no longer existed, which left me with mixed feelings of disappointment and relief. I had wanted to confront Dad about his affair and ask about Mom, but the thought of actually meeting him was nerve-wracking. As I was walking away, convinced I would never meet him and that I should forget him, I noticed a nameplate with Dad's name. I stopped, startled. Trying to convince myself it was probably someone else, curiosity led me to observe the house more closely. It was a spacious family home with a play area for children. Being a weekend, I could faintly hear children's voices. If Dad had remarried his mistress after the divorce, it wouldn't be strange if they had a family. The thought was suffocating, and as I watched the front door open and children come out, I moved to a spot farther away to continue observing. Then, the parents followed, and despite looking older than in the photos, I recognized them as Dad and his mistress. Dad had built a happy family with his mistress without paying us any compensation or child support. While Mom struggled, Dad lived comfortably. Filled with anger, I clenched my fists. After watching them leave happily as a family, I headed straight to a detective agency and requested an investigation into Dad's family. I used all my savings and part-time job earnings for this. When I later received the investigation results, it confirmed that Dad had been living well after the divorce, with 3 children. While Mom and I struggled, Dad lived comfortably without facing any consequences for his affair, a fact that left me bitter. I realized I harbored not just anger but also resentment towards Dad and his mistress, who lived carefree after abandoning Mom and me. I wanted them to experience the same pain and hardship that Mom and I went through. However, recognizing that even though they were the worst, their children were innocent, I wanted to speak with them at least once, more for my peace of mind than for revenge. So, calming myself for a composed conversation, I decided to visit after school. Dad would be at work and the kids at school, leaving his housewife mistress, Abigail, at home. What was she thinking, having an affair with a married man and now living happily with him? With questions and things I wanted to say, I went to their house on a day school ended in the morning and rang the doorbell. As expected, Abigail answered. "Yes, how can I help you?" Her normal response irritated me, and I blurted out, "How can you live normally after stealing Dad from Mom and me and breaking up our family?" It seemed I wasn't as calm as I thought, speaking sharply without realizing. What? What are you talking about? She seemed quite dubious, possibly on guard because of the sudden question. Perhaps for her, an affair was something that could be easily forgotten. This thought made my chest tighten. Amazed at how she could pretend not to know, I explained everything about my relationship with Dad and what happened 12 years ago. I broke into tears recalling the past, but once I finished, I looked at her for a reaction. The truth I learned then solidified my resolve for revenge. Some time later, I went for a job interview. With good grades and active involvement in various activities, I had many strong points. I usually passed the document screening without issues, and this time, as I faced the interviewers, it seemed like I had already left a favorable impression again. 3 interviewers questioned me while reviewing my documents. Thanks to my preparation, I answered smoothly, and the interviewer's cheerful expression and impressed attitude made me feel quite confident. At the end, when they said I could ask any questions I had, I decided to ask something I had been wanting to know. Does your company condone affairs? What actions would be taken if an affair occurs? My question surprised the interviewers, leaving them momentarily speechless. After a pause, they said they hadn't encountered such a situation but would probably impose some penalty. And when asked why I was inquiring about this, I explained the whole situation. My father, who abandoned my mother through infidelity, works here and is currently having an affair within the company. One interviewer, visibly upset, slammed the table and stood up angrily. Are you joking? How dare you come here and lie in such a manner? This is outrageous. I immediately retorted. Please don't shout just because I hit a nerve, Dad. I had actually known that Dad worked in this company and that he was involved in interviews as personnel. Therefore, I purposely attended this interview to expose Dad's actions. There were many interviewees, and it wasn't certain Dad would be the interviewer, but I thought damaging his reputation would be enough. His aggressive response to my presence added credibility to my story, and I felt a sense of satisfaction. Initially, Dad didn't seem to recognize me, but he became unsettled after reading my documents. He didn't remember my face, but my name and educational background must have made him realize I was the daughter of his ex-wife. He seemed relieved when I showed no reaction to seeing him, thinking I hadn't recognized him. I calmly retorted to Dad's anger. It's a fact that you cheated on Mom and are now in an affair with a younger woman in this company, right? I'm just stating the truth. The investigation I had commissioned revealed not only about Dad's post-divorce family but also his infidelity. Apparently, Dad was quite the philanderer, having 3 kids and still fooling around. He was having an affair with a younger female colleague, and there were photos of them looking happy together, leaving no room for denial. Is this some kind of harassment? Do you think you can get away with this? Dad accused me of lying and tried to blame me. He had been successful in hiding his actions so far and was desperate not to be punished. Smirking, I continued. It's the truth, isn't it? I wanted to know what the company thinks about having such a person in a responsible position. Dad wanted to make me look bad, but that wasn't going to happen. The other 2 interviewers, having witnessed our exchange, looked displeased. I showed them the final piece of evidence. By the way, this is the report on Dad's infidelity. I trust you will review it and take appropriate action. Dad tried to dismiss what I said in a panic, but I handed the investigation report to the other interviewers, asking them to address the affair. Dad tried to grab me, but I dodged and delivered my final blow. Abigail knows about this and is coming to the office today. I had told Abigail about Dad's affair, and in her anger, she had planned to confront him publicly. So before leaving the interview room, I declared to Dad that he had no escape. You told her? When did you even meet her? Dad, shocked and not expecting I knew Abigail, froze. Ignoring him, I left the room. Dad's yelling could still be heard after I closed the door, drawing stares from other interviewees. Normally, the atmosphere would feel uncomfortable, but knowing that I had derailed Dad's smooth life brought me a sense of relief. Originally, I came to this company solely for revenge against Dad, so failing the interview was not a concern. Having finished my task, I was walking down the hallway when I heard footsteps running up from behind. Turning around, I saw Dad, his face red with anger, charging at me to throw a punch. Surprised, I managed to dodge and avoided injury, but I stumbled and fell. Looking down at me, Dad shouted angrily, "What have you done? If it weren't for you." As Dad tried to hit me again, I braced myself, unable to evade, and covered my head with my arms, preparing for the impact. However, before he could strike, Dad froze.
"What are you doing to Chloe? And what's this about an affair? You told me you were single, but you've been deceiving me."
Abigail had arrived, startling Dad. She swung her bag at Dad, who was ready to strike me, hitting and shielding me from him.
"Abigail, it's not what you think."
Dad panicked at Abigail's arrival, but as Abigail, angered and feeling deceived, started to confront him, they began to argue. Abigail, while shouting in anger, hit Dad with her bag, causing a major commotion. It turned out that when I confronted Abigail about the affair, she was unaware that Dad was married.
"I'm sorry, even if I didn't know. You must have suffered a lot. I will definitely make it up to you. I'm truly sorry."
She apologized tearfully. Further conversation revealed that she met Dad through work, and he had been helping her as a struggling motherless child. Dad had hidden his marital status, and they eventually started dating. Abigail had been working right after graduating high school in order to live with her father, who suffered from the after effects of an accident, which also took away her mother. It was natural to develop feelings for Dad, who had helped her. I had thought the mistress would be a terrible person, but Abigail was another victim of Dad. Apparently, Mom had never asked Abigail for compensation or even contacted her, and until now, Abigail was unaware of Dad's misdeeds. I wondered why Mom hadn't pursued compensation from Abigail, but then remembered she was pregnant at the time. Perhaps Mom didn't want to burden a pregnant woman, even if she was the mistress. Thinking this as I watched Abigail tearfully apologize, I realized she wasn't the villain I had thought her to be. She didn't look like she was trying to deceive me. So, I told her about Dad's current affair with a coworker. The investigation report included evidence of Dad's ongoing infidelity. I thought that Abigail, being a victim herself, deserved to know about Dad's current actions. When I showed her the documents, she became furiously angry at Dad.
"He lied about being single, married me, and now this? What kind of person is he? I will never forgive him."
Her anger towards Dad, the betrayer, ran deep, and together we decided to take revenge on him. Originally, I had applied to Dad's company and was already scheduled for a second-round interview. So, on the day of the interview, Abigail and I had planned to go to the company and publicly denounce Dad. The two caused quite a scene in the company hallway, with other male employees restraining Dad and security arriving. I took Abigail's hand and led her out of the company after the commotion. Many people had gathered around due to the noise. Among them, I spotted the woman from the investigation photos, hiding in the shadows with a petrified look on her face. My revenge was complete by exposing Dad's misdeeds, which had been hidden until now. Subsequently, Dad, who was on the verge of becoming a department head, got demoted to a regular employee due to the affair. Since most of the situation became known during the chaos in the hallway, he seems to be working with a sense of humility. He used to have a reputation as a family-oriented and capable supervisor, but when Dad's bad deeds became known within the company, he was branded the worst man and was treated coldly. The woman Dad had an affair with apparently quietly resigned from the company. Additionally, Abigail demanded compensation and child support from Dad and informed him of her intention to divorce. With the company's cooperation, Dad couldn't escape paying. During the divorce mediation, Abigail discovered that Dad had not paid any compensation or child support to my mom, and also learned of his gambling habits in addition to spending money for his lover. Though he claimed it was occasional, he had been deceitfully spending family savings on gambling. Abigail, further enraged by these revelations, successfully demanded a higher amount of compensation and child support from Dad. Dad tried to deceive until the very end and was very reluctant about the divorce and compensation, so the mediation didn't end quickly. But Abigail persistently questioned Dad, and the commotion became known even to those outside the company who were unaware of the chaos at the office. Consequently, acquaintances of Dad who were unaware of the situation gradually distanced themselves from him. Dad became completely isolated as a result. After the divorce, Abigail offered me a part of the compensation as an apology.
This might not be enough to make amends, but I hope you'll accept it as an apology for the trouble I've caused.
However, since I had kept my revenge against Dad a secret from Mom, I declined the money.
Abigail, you're also a victim of Dad, and the children need the money more. Please keep it for them.
Mom seemed to have put her past with Dad behind her, so I had no intention of bringing it up again. I thought that Mom, who must have suffered a lot, wouldn't want to remember it anymore, even after Dad received his comeuppance. I didn't harbor any resentment towards Abigail or her children, who were also victims of Dad. Instead, I frequently visited them, concerned about their well-being as a single-parent family. The children and I grew close. And I hope they grow up righteously, unlike Dad. Getting to know Abigail better, I realized she was naturally calm and not the type to raise her voice. The stark contrast to the woman who had fiercely confronted Dad in the company made me reconsider Mom's strength during the divorce. Later, I successfully got a job at my preferred company and shared the news with Mom, who was overjoyed at my growth. Seeing her happiness made me feel content. And without the shadow of Dad, I truly relished the moment. Determined to reduce Mom's burden, I geared up for my new job. I may never forgive Dad for his actions, but he's already received his just desserts. Now, I want to live happily, not worrying about Dad anymore. I'll leave the kid for you to take care. As I wondered what he meant, Thomas uttered something unbelievable. Apparently, he was taking advantage of our current separation to live with his affair partner. He wanted to divorce me, right after my mother passed away, to marry his mistress. I had heard that separation is often treated like divorce, making it hard to claim compensation for infidelity after separating. Not caring anymore, I hung up the phone. 3 days later, I had 23 missed calls from Thomas on my mobile phone. But I thought his actions were despicable and didn't respond, just blocked his number. However, Thomas was persistent. He even sent texts through social media, which he normally never uses. That's when I decided to fight back against Thomas.
Fine, if that's how you want it, I'll show you hell.
Thomas, who didn't even attend my mother's funeral and was planning an elopement with his mistress, didn't deserve any sympathy. I was determined to pay him back double for everything he had done to us. My name is Sandra, a 46-year-old part-time worker and a housewife. My family consists of my husband Thomas, a year older than me, and our 16-year-old daughter in high school, Margaret. We lived in a small apartment in the countryside. I got married when I was 23, but after discovering I was infertile, it took 5 years of fertility treatments to finally have our long-awaited daughter. But after Margaret was born, I struggled with first-time parenting. Gradually, I lost my peace of mind and left the company I worked for, temporarily becoming a full-time housewife. In our society, whenever Margaret got sick, I, her mother, was called to accompany her to the hospital. This was what led me to quit my job. It wasn't that I hated caring for Margaret, but my boss indirectly suggested I resign, and I couldn't bear it and ran away. Eventually, staying at home all the time seemed depressing, so I put Margaret in daycare and started earning a bit as a part-time worker. Both Thomas and I couldn't forget the hardship of 5 years of fertility treatment, and we eventually settled on having just Margaret. I first noticed something was off with Thomas when Margaret was in upper elementary school. Margaret was academically gifted, so I really wanted her to try for private middle school. Margaret was positive about the idea of middle school entrance exams, and we even attended open campus events together to choose the best school. Thomas earned enough for us to live comfortably, even with me as a housewife. Plus, I was prepared to use my savings from before marriage or untouched part-time earnings for Margaret's education funds. But Thomas was adamantly against it. No. He was unyielding in his refusal to let Margaret take the exams.
What's the point of a middle school entrance exam? Let her go to a regular middle school, that's enough for Margaret. Isn't the entrance exam something for daughters of company presidents or something?
No matter how I tried to convince him, Thomas stubbornly refused. Finally, losing patience, I told Margaret,
"You can take the exam if you want. I want to support what you want to do. Just focus on your studies without any worries."
But Margaret just shook her head, looking sorry. She probably hated seeing us argue over her future. That's when I realized it. I shouldn't be showing this side of us to our child. I started to be extra careful not to get into intense arguments with Thomas for Margaret's sake. That marked the beginning of a life walking on eggshells around Thomas. But the more I tried to be careful, the more sensitive I became, and even trivial things would turn into arguments.
Hey, I've been meaning to say this for a while. Isn't this stew too salty? I've always hated this kind of seasoning.
Thomas suddenly confessed that he never liked my cooking. After our argument about the entrance exam, it seemed like he no longer held back. He started criticizing without care. For example, he started saying he didn't like Worcestershire sauce or that he always hated the tomatoes in his sandwiches. He kept going on about it at the dinner table, making me feel quite bad. So, reluctantly, I stopped adding tomatoes, which I used to make the dishes look good, and carrots, which he also said he didn't like.
"I don't want your lunch anymore. It doesn't look good and I lose my appetite."
I responded to his requests, but to that he threw away the lunch I made. Fed up with his constant complaints, I finally exploded in anger.
"Then eat out. If you're going to complain that much, I won't make your sandwiches ever again."
And from that point on, I stopped making sandwiches for Thomas altogether. A turning point came sometime later. It was when Margaret, who was attending a public middle school, was about to face high school entrance exams. Despite attending public school, she participated in an archery club outside of school and achieved a national competition placement. Margaret was also academically successful and skilled at piano, a hobby I had introduced to her. She always looked forward to her weekly lessons. She was an all-rounder, diligent, and even serving as the vice president of the student council. Although I had reluctantly made her give up on middle school entrance exams, I hoped this time she could attend the high school of her choice. When I asked about her preferred high school, she named a renowned private school within the state.
"I wasn't sure if I should say it, but I really want to go here. It's a prestigious school for archery, and I'll work hard for it."
I nodded emphatically at Margaret's words. Margaret had started to accommodate her father Thomas, always putting herself last. She would decline offers to buy books or clothes she wanted.
"It's okay."
Even when I gave her these as birthday gifts, she looked apologetic. Seeing my child like this filled me, as a mother, with a sense of helplessness. That's why I wanted to make her bravely spoken dream a reality. I reassured her that we could afford it with my savings and education insurance. However, when I informed Thomas about Margaret's educational aspirations, predictably, he flatly refused. No way.
Attending a private high school in the state means she can't commute from here. So, she'll need a dorm or an apartment, right? I won't allow it. It's a waste of money.
His words infuriated me. Calling the education expenses for our only daughter a waste? I couldn't hold back.
"You opposed to her middle school exams too. Why do you always say such things? Doesn't she deserve to live her life the way she wants?"
But my words seemed to have no effect on Thomas. He sighed theatrically and exclaimed,
"No, private school and living alone as a high school student are a waste of money. If she doesn't go to a local public high school, I won't support you guys financially anymore."
At that moment, I snapped.
"Fine, have it your way. But don't complain about whatever we decide to do. I'll figure it out, so you go ahead and apply to the high school you want." There's no need for you to compromise this time. Okay? Do as you wish.
I encouraged Margaret again, but she looked worried. But she hesitated. Even so, I repeatedly reassured her. It's okay. And it seemed that Margaret had made up her mind. The following spring, Margaret successfully got into her first-choice high school.
Mom, I did it!
Margaret returned from school with a beaming smile and shared the news. There's no parent who wouldn't be overjoyed at their child's successful high school entrance. I made a red velvet cake and praised her like crazy. Although there were tough times, she had done well. However, Thomas, not celebrating this achievement, said something awful.
As promised, you take care of Margaret and yourself from now on. I won't contribute to the household expenses anymore.
And just like that, he coldly stated his decision and stopped providing for the household expenses. Margaret would be moving into the high school dormitory soon. For me, knowing that my parenting phase was somewhat coming to an end and having already decided to work as a regular employee at a hospital where an acquaintance worked, I didn't think I would struggle financially. Therefore, Thomas's words and actions didn't bother me anymore. Months had passed since Margaret started high school. She had adapted to her new life, and I was relieved to hear that. I was working part-time, similar to full-time hours, at a hospital where an acquaintance worked, with an expectation of being made a full-time employee soon. I thought we wouldn't struggle financially. Thus, Thomas's words and actions didn't bother me anymore. Although Thomas and I hadn't divorced yet, we had been living separately for months after he moved out to a different apartment. I was busy with my new life, but realizing I could live without Thomas, I planned to divorce him as soon as everything was ready. I assumed Thomas wouldn't want to continue this separation forever either. Believing this separation would end one way or another, I went to the city office to get divorce papers. But then, I received devastating news. My mom back home had passed away. When I got the call from my dad, I was so shocked that I collapsed. Mom had always been frail, in and out of hospitals since I was young. I remembered praying with Dad for her successful surgeries. I knew she had been battling cancer for a year now and understood that her time was limited. Still, the news of her passing was hard to accept. Dad, having lost his lifelong partner, looked utterly defeated and downcast. He clearly lacked the strength to act as the representative of the family at the funeral. So, I stepped up to take on that role. Being an only child, there was no one else who could do it. Dad weakly smiled at my offer. "That would be a great help," he said in a faint voice. We hadn't told anyone about our separation, not even Dad or our acquaintances. So, I thought it best to invite Thomas to the funeral. I quickly sent him a text with details about Mom's passing and the funeral arrangements. As expected, there was no reply. On the day of the funeral, Thomas didn't show up, and Margaret, who had come home for the occasion, muttered, "He's the worst." Even Dad, who looked so frail, was angry, feeling insulted for his wife and daughter. I had my own grievances against Thomas, but now wasn't the time for that.
Both of you, I feel the same way. But do you want to send her off with angry faces? Mom always said, nothing can beat a smile, didn't she?
My words reminded Dad and Margaret of Mom's cheerful nature. We managed to regain our composure and give Mom a proper send-off. That night, Thomas finally called back, but with an insensitive remark. "I'll leave the kid for you to take care." In such a situation, what was he thinking? As I silently pondered, Thomas, unasked, began to talk volubly. "Let me put it simple. I'm planning to elope with my girlfriend. She's younger and cuter than you." Apparently, he was living with his mistress, using our separation to his advantage, and wanted to divorce me right after my mom's death so he could marry her. I've heard separation is often treated like divorce, making it hard to claim alimony for infidelity afterwards. But for me, such things didn't matter anymore. "Oh, really? Do as you please," I replied and hung up the phone. 3 days later, I had 23 missed calls from Thomas on my mobile phone. Thinking how despicable he was, I didn't respond and blocked his number. When he realized I wasn't going to answer the phone, he started sending apologies through social media. That's when I decided to fight back against Thomas.
Fine, if that's how you want it, I'll show you hell.
Thomas had declared abandoning me and Margaret at the time of my mother's funeral, and on top of that, he was planning an elopement with his mistress. Mercy was unnecessary for someone like him who had mistreated us. I decided to pay him back double for everything he had done. I immediately texted to Thomas.
Let's meet tomorrow.
The next day, I waited for Thomas at the cafe where we had agreed to meet. A few minutes later, Thomas arrived in a hurry, his face pale and clearly agitated. I had nothing to say to him. So, I just silently, or perhaps glaringly, stared at him. Thomas, unnerved by my uncharacteristically explicit attitude, slowly began to speak. I truly regret not being able to attend your mom's funeral. But there's a reason. I'm a bit shaken, you know, it was just bad timing. Curious, I listened to his explanation. Apparently, one of Thomas's relatives had collapsed and was in critical condition, needing surgery to have a chance of survival.
So what? If surgery is the only option, then just do it. What does that have to do with anything else?
Thomas's face twisted in anguish as he replied. It's a complex surgical procedure that can't be done in a normal hospital. So, it's going to be expensive, and insurance won't cover it. According to Thomas, it was an advanced medical operation that had to be paid entirely out of pocket. His family decided to pool money, and Thomas had to contribute around $10,000. I was astounded. How could he so easily spin such lies?
It's not Betty or Richard, it's some relative I've never even met, right?
When I coldly responded, Thomas turned red with anger.
Don't be so cold. You, who just lost your mother, should understand my feelings.
I understood, but it was an entirely different issue.
First of all, the timing of your relative's illness right after my mother's death is suspicious. And is it really a disease that requires advanced medical treatment? What's the diagnosis? How much will the surgery cost in total?
As I pressed him with my thoughts, Thomas stumbled over his words and fell silent. My family, being well-known local landowners, had savings close to $1 million, which I was aware of. Even though Thomas might not know the details, he knew my family was wealthy, so I suspected he was after the inheritance. Given his past behavior, I couldn't trust him, even if he genuinely needed a significant amount of money for a medical issue. I sighed exaggeratedly and then continued.
What you and I need to discuss are divorce, custody, and division of assets.
That's all. But then Thomas pleaded.
Wait. I'll never do anything to make you sad again. Reconsider, please.
His face was contorted, clearly desperate to change the situation. I spoke again, more firmly.
I can't have any hope for a future with you anymore. If you feel sorry, please proceed with the divorce.
Saying that, I stood up, paid only for my coffee, and left. That night, Thomas unexpectedly showed up at our house.
Hey, I know you're in there, open the door.
When Thomas left to start our separation, he said he'd never return and left the keys, so naturally, he couldn't get in. However, at that moment, I was in the bathroom and didn't notice Thomas's arrival. It appeared that Margaret had responded instead, and when I noticed something was amiss and went to the front door, I saw the two of them. Margaret was home for the summer holidays, and had been staying with us since the funeral. What I saw was Thomas deeply apologizing and Margaret standing tall, looking down on him. What's going on? Thomas, what are you doing here? Thomas looked up, begging for forgiveness.
Please, I'm begging you. Can you just lend me $10,000 as an advance on the property division?
I thought he had come to apologize, but he was still asking for money. It became clear that Thomas didn't care about me or Margaret. Frustrated, I almost let my anger take over but managed to hold back. I wanted to yell and drive him away, but I knew running away wasn't an option anymore. For Margaret's sake, This separation needed to be resolved quickly. After taking a deep breath to calm myself, I said to Thomas,
"That's irrelevant now. I already told you I wouldn't help you out with that. We handled my mother's funeral with my relatives, and you were not involved. Therefore, I don't see any need to care for a relative of yours I've never met."
Thomas seemed to lose his words in response, as if he had nothing to say back. Thomas had always been hands-off with my family matters, whether it was hospitalization or funerals. Yet, now that he was in a bind, he wanted my help, which was far too convenient. Realizing that nothing he said would change my mind, Thomas turned to Margaret.
"Margaret, you tell Mom too. To you, a relative of your father is family too, right? Come on, please. You're kind-hearted, you'd feel bad knowing a family member is sick, right?"
Typically quiet, and when he did speak it was usually sarcastic, but in such moments, Thomas became talkative. And now, he was clinging to the daughter he tried to abandon for his mistress, having not even paid for her high school. I felt a headache coming on. I endured a lot for Margaret's sake, but maybe it would have been better to have divorced from the start and lived just the two of us. But it was too late for regrets now. I wondered what Margaret was thinking. Maybe she'd be moved by her father's words and try to persuade me. But as embarrassing as it was for me to have even considered that for a moment, Margaret responded with a resolute expression. "Who are you?" Both Thomas and I were stunned by her response. It wasn't rejection or comfort, but a denial of his very existence. Watching Margaret's composed face, I felt relieved. Impressed by the strength of my grown-up daughter, Margaret continued without looking at Thomas.
"You said you're leaving the kid to Mom, right? So, you've essentially abandoned your parental rights. You're divorcing Mom and going with your mistress, aren't you?"
It seemed Margaret had overheard my phone conversation with Thomas. I thought I had been discreet, but she must have had her own thoughts about her father not attending the funeral. To her, a man who was separated and unfaithful, saying he didn't need her, was nothing more than a stranger. She declared him an outsider. That left Thomas utterly devastated, frozen in place. Margaret sighed deeply and glared at him.
"After all the obstacles you've put in my path, don't try to act like a father now. To me, the only parent is Mom. I don't care about someone who didn't even show up for my beloved grandmother's funeral."
Thomas stayed motionless for a while, but gradually seemed to grasp Margaret's words. Rising up with a furious look, he stared at Margaret.
"You ungrateful child. Do you know how much I've sacrificed for you? If you're going to say that, then pay back all the school fees I've paid up till middle school."
How childish was he? Who demands repayment for raising their own child? It made me nauseous to think he was my husband. Thomas, about to say something more, stepped closer to us. Margaret, sensing fear, stepped back. But just then, we heard the siren of a police car and saw it stop in front of the apartment. Thomas halted his advance and slowly turned around. Outside, the people I faced were our neighbors, their expressions even more daunting than Thomas's. Caught up in the commotion with Thomas, I hadn't realized I left the front door open. The walls of the apartment are thin, and many people were home during the evening hours. A neighbor, having heard the ruckus, apparently called the police. When Thomas realized the police were there for him, he became visibly flustered, losing all his previous bravado. The officers stepped out of the patrol car and came straight to us to inquire about the situation. Our neighbors had reported Thomas as a suspicious person. I've always had a good relationship with my neighbors. And when I mentioned my mother's funeral, they even said,
"Please let us pay our respects."
So they attended, and noticing that Thomas was absent, I had candidly explained. Remembering how they had unanimously condemned Thomas's absence and behavior recently, it was no surprise they called the police when they heard him causing a scene. Thomas always said neighborhood relations were unnecessary, but in that moment, I was grateful for our close-knit community. And the police didn't irresponsibly leave the scene unresolved. Thomas desperately tried to clear up the misunderstanding.
"I'm the head of this household.
What's wrong with a husband returning to his wife and daughter's home? This is just a little family disagreement, nothing that needs to trouble the police. That's what he was pleading. His earnest plea only sparked a chorus of boos from onlookers. The officer calmed the crowd and then asked me if Thomas's claims were true. I answered honestly.
I'm embarrassed to say, but we are currently separated. My husband already has someone else, and we were ready for divorce. I've even prepared the divorce papers.
The officer believed my story and instructed Thomas to return to his current residence. The neighbors, who had been watching from a distance, emanated an aura of go back home already. Thomas still seemed eager to argue, but I told him, this won't solve anything.
Besides, when we separated, this house was transferred to my name, and I've been paying the rent.
Don't just barge in. He had no reply to that. Margaret then chimed in, echoing my sentiment.
Officer, I'm scared of this man.
That seemed to be the final straw. The police, recognizing the need to protect Margaret, a minor, firmly told Thomas,
Dad, it's time to go home.
Facing the backlash, Thomas realized his efforts were futile and dejectedly left. 2 weeks have passed since Thomas's visit. I consulted a lawyer about the incident and decided to proceed with the divorce, seeking their assistance. Given Thomas's behavior, a straightforward discussion seemed unlikely. The lawyer agreed, confirming my decision was right. Finally, the day came to speak with Thomas again. He appeared dejected, but I unceremoniously handed him the documents without a word. Thomas browsed through them, puzzled at first, but his expression turned to one of shock.
Wait, what is this? How did you find this out?
The document detailed a compensation claim against Thomas and his mistress. All of Thomas's previous behavior was a facade. While it was true he had an affair, the woman had instigated him to play a part.
If the mother-in-law had passed away, Sandra will inherit something, right? Just shake her up a bit, and she'll probably want to settle with money. It'll be easier for us to get married. How about getting around $10,000?
The story about needing money for advanced medical treatment for a sick family member was a lie. It was a fictional scenario created to swindle money from me. I had felt uneasy about the whole situation. After the funeral, Thomas had called nonchalantly, ready to break up, but then suddenly turned desperate by dawn. I suspected there was more to it. The timing was too convenient. Trusting my intuition, right after Thomas's call, I secretly hired a private investigator to conduct a background check. With Thomas openly admitting his affair, he made no attempt to hide his infidelity, making gathering evidence straightforward. Furthermore, emboldened by his admission, he was captured toasting with his mistress.
To our 5th anniversary, cheers!
This meant Thomas had been having an affair for 5 years, even before our separation when our marriage wasn't yet in disarray. This meant I could claim compensation. Confronted with his lies exposed, Thomas began to tremble. His hands weakened, dropping the stack of papers on the desk. His eyes became vacant, his mouth moving as if searching for words. After 5 minutes, he managed to utter, "What should I do?" I leaned forward as if I had been waiting for those words.
I'll be claiming $30,000 from you as compensation for the affair and the emotional distress you've caused me. And from the other woman, $10,000.
These amounts were the maximum claimable according to standard rates. Thomas panicked at the hefty sum.
I can't pay that. I mean, if I do, it will ruin my life.
His excuses were expected. So, I presented an alternative.
Then let's settle it with compensation in the form of property division. But child support is a separate matter. You'll pay for all of Margaret's expenses, including her high school and future college fees.
Faced with Thomas's refusal, I pressed on.
If you default, I'll go to court for enforcement. Your employer will be notified, and the amount will be deducted from your salary.
Faced with this reality, Thomas reluctantly signed the documents my lawyer had prepared. This marked the end of our long battle. Afterwards, Thomas and I officially divorced, and the financial matters were settled through compensatory property division. Thomas had nearly no savings due to funding his mistress. So in the end, I was only able to protect the savings I had diligently amassed. Naturally, Thomas ended up with nothing from the divorce, a significant blow to him. Concerned about his employer finding out, he has been diligently paying child support every month. Margaret, as if to spite him, studied hard and got accepted into a prestigious private university. I can only imagine the look on Thomas's face when he received the bill for her tuition. His mistress, shortly after paying me the compensation, was arrested and convicted on charges of marriage fraud. It turns out she had other partners besides Thomas, promising marriage to each of them. Thomas really lacked judgment. Thomas, having lost his family, money, and mistress, and as well as his relationships with relatives and friends, would not have ventured into an affair if he had known it would lead to such despair. He lacked such foresight. Now, he leads a lonely life of just working and going home, paying child support every month. Apparently, his colleagues and neighbors knew about his situation, and he faces their cold stares, living in misery. Never underestimate the power of rural gossip network. Thomas learned this the hard way. Meanwhile, I returned home to support my dad, leading a peaceful life. One day, as my daughter was nearing her college graduation, she brought home a young man who seemed very pleasant.
"He's my boyfriend."
Dad, moved to tears at the prospect of Margaret's marriage, and I finally felt a sense of relief. Months later, as I helped Margaret with her veil on her wedding day, she said to me with tears in her eyes,
"Mom, thank you for raising me. I promise I'll live a happy life."
Attending my beloved daughter Margaret's wedding filled me with joy. Having parted ways with a terrible husband and seeing Margaret in her wedding dress was more than enough to fill my heart. I decided to cherish every minute and second for the rest of my life.